With Season 1 right around the corner, you might be thinking about trying a new class, and in this video we're going to go in depth on the top builds for each class. Let me know in the comments which class and build you're going for Diablo 4's Season of the Malignant. And first up we have the Sever Necromancer. This Necromancer build is awesome. It's relaxing, easy to play, and honestly doesn't require a lot of brain power, at least as far as I can tell. It excels at both clearing groups of monsters and single target, and really captures the class fantasy of an undead summoner. This build is known for being a top tier leveling build for Necro, so it is a great starting build for Season 1. This build is the Sever Necromancer. Now before we get in the build, don't forget to click that like button, subscribe, and check me out on Twitch to see live gameplay. Alright, let's begin starting with the skill tree. So we're going to start with Reap. Swipe an ethereal scythe in front of you, dealing damage. Hitting an enemy with Reap increases your damage reduction by 15% for 2 seconds. So this build is going to get that DR right off the bat with our basic skill. We're going to get Enhanced Reap, which says if an enemy hit by Reap dies within 2 seconds, you gain plus 30% attack speed for 2 seconds. That is awesome. And then we're going to get Acolyte's Reap. Reap forms a corpse under the first enemy hit, can only occur every 4 seconds. The reason this is really great is because we need corpses because we want to be using them, which gives us essence, as you'll see later on. And it also gives us a never-ending supply to resummon our minions or to heal our minions with those skeletal priests. All right, moving into the core tree, we're going to go ahead and get the namesake of the build, Sever. A specter of you charges forward and attacks with its scythe for 92% damage, then returns to you and attacks again for 29% damage. This is awesome. This ability is way better than I thought it was. I love the AoE ability of this skill. Once you pull everything in with corpse tendrils, you can actually just sever everything in an awesome AoE. It's actually quite good. Then we get Enhanced Sever, which says Sever damages enemies along its path for 40% of its initial damage. So anything between you and your target will get hit. And then finally Supernatural Sever. Sever deals 2% increased damage for each minion you have upon cast. And so you can see the synergy here with sort of the Summoner Necro plus the Sever. You're going to get 2% increased damage for each minion. Really going to encourage you to have as many minions as you possibly can. Also in the core tree, we're going to be getting Hued Flesh. It says lucky hit, your damage has up to a 12% chance to create a corpse at the target's location. This chance is doubled against bosses. This is great once again for those corpses which we need for corpse explosion, for summoning minions, etc. Then we're also going to get 1 point into unliving energy as a prerequisite to get imperfectly balanced. Your core skills cost 9% more essence but deal 15% increased damage. This is great. Sever gets really strong with all these bonuses. Moving on to this part of the skill tree, we're going to get Corpse Explosion. This is going to do really great AoE damage. We're going to get Enhanced Corpse Explosion to increase the radius by 15%, and then we're actually going to get Blighted Corpse Explosion. This is actually a key part of the build. Check this out. Corpse Explosion becomes a darkness skill, and instead of exploding, it releases a Vile Miasma, dealing 110% shadow damage over 6 seconds. This is really great because we're now dealing shadow damage, which is actually a key part of the build. Actually, if you look at our basic and our core skills, those are already shadow. So now Corpse Explosion is also shadow, so you can start to see the trend happening here with this build, and its damage over time, which is really nice. We're gonna get 3 points into Skeletal Warrior Mastery. Increases the damage and life of your skeletal warriors by 45%, which is awesome. And then Grim Harvest, consuming a corpse generates 6 essence. This is great. You don't even really need to use your basic skill all that often when you're generating all these different corpses from the passives we just went through and your basic skill. And then when you use those corpses, either summoning a minion or causing a corpse explosion, this is going to generate essence, which is really awesome. And then when you consume a corpse, you're also going to deal 9% increased damage for 6 seconds. So make sure to be consuming a corpse every 6 seconds to keep that 9% damage, which is really nice. 3 points into Skeletal Mage Mastery. Same exact thing as the warriors, except it's just for the mages. We get increased damage and life of those mages. Then we're going to get Corpse Tendrils. This skill is really awesome. Check it out. Veins burst out of a corpse, pulling in enemies, stunning them for 3 seconds and dealing 20% damage to them. Does not consume the corpse. I love that. Basically, you use Corpse Tendrils and then use Corpse Explosion because the corpse was not consumed by the tendrils. And check this out. We're going to upgrade it to Enhanced Corpse Tendrils. Enemies who are in range of Corpse Tendrils are slowed by 50% before being pulled. Enemies damaged by Corpse Tendrils are made vulnerable for 3 seconds. Vulnerability is such a good, thing to put on enemies. 20% increased damage is so strong. You pull them all in, they're all vulnerable, and then you just sever for awesome AoE damage, which does tons. We're going to put 1 point into Reaper's Pursuit. Damaging enemies with darkness skills give you movement speed by 5%. This is just a prereq because we actually want to put 3 points into Gloom. When you damage enemies with darkness skills, they take 6% increased damage from you and your minions for 2 seconds, stacking up to 3 times. So that's 18% increased shadow damage. Awesome. And then 3 points into Terror. Darkness skills deal 9% bonus damage to enemies who are slowed and 9% bonus bonus damage to enemies who are stunned or immobilized. These bonuses stack and apply to shadow damage dealt by your minions. So this is awesome. And notice how it says stunned, right? Well, we're also going to get crippling darkness. Lucky hit darkness skills have up to a 15% chance to stun for 1 second. And we're only going to put 1 point into this because it's only going to increase the duration by 1 second per point. And that's just not very efficient. So this is kind of a 1 point wonder here in this skill tree. Moving on to the ultimates, we're going to get 3 points into Golem Mastery, increases the damage and life of your golem by 75%. Very nice. 1 point into Inspiring Leader as a prereq, 3 points into Hellbent Commander. Your minions deal 30% increased damage while you are close to them. 3 points into Death's Defense. Your minions cannot lose more than 30% of their maximum life from a single damage instance. This is really great against hard-hitting bosses, things like world bosses or bosses that have just a really strong charge-up ability. This is going to keep your minions alive during those intense fights against a powerful monster. And then finally, Shadow Blight is our key passive. Shadow damage infects enemies with Shadow Blight for 2 seconds. You and your minions deal 10% bonus damage to enemies with Shadow Blight. Every 10th time an enemy receives shadow damage from you or your minions while they are affected by Shadow Blight, they take an additional 22% shadow damage. So this completes the whole shadow build. Of course, we're doing tons of shadow damage with all of our different abilities. Even our minions are dealing some shadow damage as well. And so this is just perfect. It's the cherry on top. Let's move on to the gear and skills, starting with the legendary aspects, which I love to talk about. Aspect of Might is absolutely one of my favorites. Whenever you use a basic skill, you get 20% damage reduction. You can unlock this by completing Dark Ravine and Dry Steps. You can put this in, your helm, your legs, your chest, wherever. The next defensive we're going to get is Aspect of the Protector. Damaging an elite enemy grants you a barrier, absorbing X damage for 10 seconds. Unlocked by completing Lost Archives and Fractured Peaks. That one's really easy. You can get this one very early on. And then one of my absolute favorites here is an offensive aspect called Aspect of Grasping Veins. Gain 10 to 20% increased critical strike chance for 6 seconds when you cast Corpse Tendrils. You deal 30% bonus critical strike damage to enemies damaged by Corpse Tendrils. This is just perfect, right? You just use Corpse Tendrils. They're vulnerable. You deal bonus critical strike damage to them. You have increased critical strike chance on those enemies, and they're all pulled in together. Perfect for you to combo with Sever over and over. It's going to just absolutely send them into the meat grinder once you use that Corpse Tendrils ability. It's awesome. You can unlock this by completing the Corrupted Grotto in Kyrgyzstan. And then finally, my absolute favorite defensive aspect in the pants, we have Aspect of Disobedience. You gain 0.25 to 50% increased armor for 4 seconds when you deal any form of damage, stacking up to 50%. Absolutely incredible. Armor is so good in Diablo 4, so this is just perfect for that. You can unlock this by completing Halls of the Damned in Kyrgyzstan. Now in our boots, we're going to get Wind Striker's Aspect. Critical strikes grant movement speed. Unlocked by completing Shiv to Ruins in Kyrgyzstan. We are going to get increased critical strike chance from Aspect of Grasping Veins, and so we should definitely be getting some crits during that whole combo wombo there. In our amulet, we're going to get Aspect of Reanimation. Your skeletons gain increased damage while alive, up to 20 to 30% after 10 seconds. This is just awesome. Talk about making your skeletons stronger. You can unlock this by completing Alderwood in Skazglen. And again, we're putting this in the amulet, so your skeletons are going to get even 50% more than that. In the ring slot, we're going to get Blighted Aspect. You deal 50 to 120% increased damage for 6 seconds after the Shadow Blight key passive damages enemies 10 times. This is huge. 50 to 120% increased damage. That is absolutely crazy. You can unlock this by completing Akan's Grasp and Hawazar. See, this is a great build. We can get some really strong aspects guaranteed through these dungeons, which is really, really awesome. Love this aspect. And finally, Aspect of the Umbral. Another one of my favorites, probably my favorite resource aspect. Check this out. Restore 1 to 4 of your primary resource when you crowd control an enemy. Absolutely love it. You'll be getting tons of your resource back just by simply crowd controlling enemies, unlocked by completing Champion's Demise in Dry Steps. So those are the legendary aspects. I think they're all super easy to get. Here we go in the gem slots. We're going to get Amethyst in the weapon. This is going to increase your damage over time. We have so many things that are actually damage over time, so this is perfect. We're going to get Ruby for the armor to increase our maximum life, which is really strong. And then finally the Skull for armor. Armor is just so good. It increases our physical damage reduction, all of our elemental damage reductions. It's fantastic. We went through our skills, but basically we want to, if we're getting things that increase our minions' strength, we want Raised Skeleton. This is going to be our skeletal skirmishers and also our skeletal mages. You can see here we actually opt to get upgrade number 2. Reapers have a 15% chance to carve the flesh off enemies forming a corpse. We love corpses for all the different reasons we went through in the skill tree. We can get more damage from consuming the corpse, resource from consuming the corpse, and we need those corpses to use our abilities. Skeletal mages here. Shadow mages fire an additional shadow bolt every 6th attack, and the reason we want shadow mages is because we're doing all this shadow damage, and it's great synergy when your minions are also dealing that shadow damage. For the golem here, you can see we're also going to get the golem. We're going to get the blood golem, and it says right here your blood golem absorbs 15% of damage you would take. Such a strong, awesome golem ability to just take 15% damage that you would have taken instead of you, which is great. And then on top of that, check this out. The blood golem drains life from nearby enemies to heal and bolster itself. Awesome, awesome, awesome. So I love the blood golem, absolutely my favorite. Of course, we're going to have Reap and Sever as our other two skills. And that is the Sever Necromancer leveling build. You get to utilize all of your summons with this build, which is really fun. It really captures that Necromancer class fantasy. I actually think this build is very relaxing. I never really feel threatened. My minions are constantly taking care of stuff, and I just sit around creating shadow blights all over the ground using Corpse Explosion, which is just absolutely awesome. That vile miasma, right? And next up is the Bone Necromancer. This Necromancer build is awesome. It has the fastest leveling I have ever seen for a Necromancer, one-shotting each monster, dealing massive linear AoE and single target damage. This build is known for being top tier, and it is also great for leveling, so it's a great pick for starting season 1. This build is the Bone Necromancer. All right, let's start out with these skills this time. So we're going to get Bone Splinters as our basic skill. This is, of course, has great synergy with all the other bone skills we're going to get, and it's going to help us generate essence. We're going to upgrade it with Enhanced Bone Splinters, and then we're going to get Acolyte's Bone Splinters. Now you might be wondering, don't you want the vulnerability from Initiate's Bone Splinters, which gives you a 20% chance to make enemies vulnerable? And the answer is yes, we do want vulnerability, but 8% critical strike chance is simply too good to pass up. 8% critical strike chance is massive, and a whole 8%. And so that is going to be better than some vulnerability that we're spreading, especially since typically what we're going to do when we cast Bone Splinters is cast it frequently over and over and over, because this whole build basically is centered around having high essence. And we're going to show you 4 or 5 different examples why you want to have high essence with this build. So after we get Bone Splinters, we're going to move over and we're going to get Bone Spear. Bone Spear is our core skill. We're going to enhance it, and then we're going to get Supernatural Bone Spear. Makes the first enemy hit vulnerable for 3 seconds, and it pierces them, right? And we're going to get an aspect, which we'll talk about later on, which even makes the non-primary enemy hit get vulnerability. So we can spread vulnerability to tons of enemies very, very easily with Bone Spear. We're also going to get Unliving Energy, which makes your maximum essence increased by 9, which is really good for this build, which is going to be based off of, we're going to get lots of bonuses based on how much essence we have. We're going to want Imperfectly Balanced. We're going to get more damage at the cost of more essence. We're going to also get Hewed Flesh. Lucky hit, your damage has up to a 12% chance to create a corpse at the target's location. This is going to be huge because we want to consume corpses, and every time we consume a corpse with like Corpse Explosion, which we'll get to, is we're going to get bonuses. Things like spawning blood orbs, and those blood orbs are going to give us bonuses as well when we consume them, which we'll get from aspects. Over here in the defensive part of the tree, Blood Mist is so important. This is going to give us Unstoppable, but really it's giving us Immune, which is not only just unstoppable, but also invulnerable. Not only are we able to not get CC'd, we also cannot take damage. So Blood Mist is like the Necromancer's super overpowered, unstoppable skill. Absolutely worth it to get Blood Mist. We're going to 5 out of 5 Corpse Explosion because it's just so strong. It's going to consume corpses for us, and it's going to, there's going to be a lot of synergy there. We're going to upgrade that into Blighted Corpse Explosion. So the strategy here is to use Corpse Explosion, which will then turn into a pool of poison, dealing shadow damage over time, and then use that in different locations so that you're spreading this poison or this shadow damage, which is a damage over time. And so you don't need to spam it necessarily all in the same spot, but rather just create these pools and then go back to using bone skills. And the reason we want to consume corpses again is from Grim Harvest. Consuming a corpse generates 6 essence. So this is going to help keep your essence up, which is really nice. And then fueled by death, you deal increased damage for 6 seconds after consuming a corpse. So every 6 seconds, make sure to consume at least a corpse every 6 seconds so that you're constantly dealing 9% more damage. Over here, we're going to get Death's Reach. You deal 12% damage to distant enemies. Very straightforward. Don't be in melee range when you're using stuff if you can. And then Corpse Tendrils. This is really cool. It actually pulls enemies to a location, to a corpse, and that does not consume the corpse. And what actually happens is that enemies who are in range of Corpse Tendrils get slowed, pulled, and then made vulnerable for 3 seconds. And vulnerability is huge for this build, and you'll see why in just a second, besides the 20% increased damage to vulnerable targets, of course. So bone passives, we want Serration. Increase critical strike chance for each 10 essence you have upon cast. This is one of the few skills I was talking about where you want to have high essence, right? This means if you're full essence, you have pretty much a 90% increased critical strike chance. Absolutely crazy, right? So that's why we want to increase it even further beyond our max if we can to get even higher critical strike chance. And then here we have Compound Fracture. Slasher. After critically striking 10 times, your bone skills deal 15% increased damage. Very, very strong. And then Evulsion, your bone skills deal increased critical strike damage to vulnerable enemies. And so that's a big reason we want vulnerability. 18% increased critical strike damage when they're vulnerable. Very, very, very strong. Okay, moving over to the ultimate tree. Now we are sacrificing all minions because we're getting Bone Storm, and that's our 6th skill. And if you have 6 skills, then you can't have minions. So Bone Storm is the ultimate. We're going to make it so the DR is increased by 15% while Bone Storm is active, and our crit chance increased by 20%. So huge bonuses while Bone Storm is up. More crit, less damage. Standalone is going to increase our DR by an additional 18%, and it's going to be reduced by 2% for each active minion. We have 0 active minions, so we get the full 18% DR. Memento Mori is also going to increase the sacrifice bonuses of skeletal warriors and mages by 60%. Those 2 bonuses we'll get to, but it's revolving around crit and vulnerability. We'll get to the specifics when we get over to the gear and skills tab. Ossified Essence is our key passive. Bone skills deal 1% increased damage for each point of essence you have above 50 upon cast. So we went through 2 things right here, which basically is saying do not use your core skills unless you have more than 50 essence, right? So really everything above 50 is just bonus. You want to be max, right? Then over here, the more you have, the higher the critical strike chance. So huge. And we're even going to get an aspect that is going to make this even very similar, right? Where the more resource you have, the more damage you do, and critical strike damage, which we'll get to. So this is the skill tree all the way up to level 50, right? And then 10 additional points. So this is everything. And then we're going to go to gear and skills now. Now these aspects are amazing. They are truly game changing for this build. So first of all, we're going to go through some of these defensive ones first. Aspect of the Shielding Storm. When Bone Storm damages an enemy, which it does pretty much like every second, you're going to gain a barrier for 2 to 5% of your base life for 10 seconds. So it gives you DR. Now it's also going to give you a nice barrier equal to a percentage of your max life, which is why we're going to put everything in our armor, a ruby, for 4% each gem. We're going to get increased max life. So that's going to give us this max life based barrier. Over here, Aspect of Disobedience. Personally, this is my absolute favorite aspect. Armor is the best stat in the game right now. It gives you physical damage reduction and resistance to all elements. And so this can give you up to 50% increased armor. Absolutely crazy. And it's actually perfect with Bone Storm because anytime you deal any form of damage, it's going to increase your armor by 0.5 up to 50%. And so bone armor is just ticking like crazy with everything around you. It's a great way to get Aspect of Disobedience stacks up. Splintering Aspect, very critical for this build. You can get this by progressing the campaign in Dry Steppe. What it does is that Bone Spear's primary attack makes enemies hit beyond the first vulnerable for 1.5 to 2.5 seconds. Bone Shards from Bone Spear deal 50 to 100% bonus damage to vulnerable enemies and pierce them. So remember, your initial attack will pierce, and then now the shards are also going to pierce with Splintering Aspect. And not only that, the primary attack of Bone Spear is also going to make all enemies vulnerable, right? Because we already make the first one vulnerable from a skill in the skill tree, but this aspect right here makes enemies hit beyond the first vulnerable. So all enemies hit by Bone Spear now become vulnerable, and then those shards from Bone Spear are going to deal increased damage to vulnerable enemies and pierce them. So even better AoE with this. Such a good aspect. And then Aspect of the Embalmer. I find this one so fun. Consuming a corpse has a 20 to 30% chance to spawn a Blood Orb. Now you might be thinking, Blood Orb, probably not needed. Check this out. Aspect of Potent Blood. While at full life, Blood Orbs grant 10 to 20 essence. So this is perfect for the build, which is so reliant on having essence high to get all those different bonuses. This will allow you to use Corpse Explosion and essentially generate blood orbs, which, by the way, just using Corpse Explosion generates essence because of our skill tree. But we're also now going to be creating blood orbs, which then can grant us even more essence. So really awesome synergy between Aspect of Potent Blood, which you can unlock by completing Betrayer's Row and Dry Steppes, and Aspect of the Embalmer. These two work together great. Moving on to our boots, we have Wind Striker's Aspect. Critical strikes grant movement speed. This is kind of a no-brainer. We are just stacking critical strike chance. We can get up to a guaranteed critical strike chance at maximum essence, and so we get a guaranteed movement speed. So Wind Striker is great. Aspect of Serration is huge. Ossified Essence key passive also increases the critical strike damage of your bone skills by 1% per essence, up to 30 to 40%. The reason this is so good is because this is like our fourth skill that is saying the more essence you have, the better your character does, right? More damage, more critical strike damage, more critical critical strike chance, right? And then we're going to take it one even further here with Edge Masters. The more resource you have, you're going to deal even more damage. It says here skills deal 10 to 20% increased damage based on your available primary resource when cast, receiving the maximum benefit when you have full primary resource. So that's like the 5 things that all help you, right, when you have higher resource. So really never even use a skill if you're below 50 resource, right? That's sort of a good rule of thumb to make sure you're constantly getting the full bonuses from all your different aspects and skill passives. Our next aspect is Aspect of Torment. Critical strikes with bone skills increase your essence regeneration by 20 to 30% for 4 seconds. Very much needed considering how many things are relying on us having high essence. So all fits together really great. I think this is such a great build. When it comes to the gems, we talked about the armor one, increase our max life to increase our barrier, survivability, etc. Armor is the best defensive stats. We want armor in the jewelry, and then emerald in the weapon for increased critical strike damage to vulnerable enemies. These are our skill loadout. Defensive, we got nice corpse usage, vulnerability, all that stuff here. When it comes to the minions, now I mentioned earlier we do sacrifice them all, right? If we use these 6 skills, we're going to be sacrificing the skeletal skirmishers for 5% increased critical strike chance. And remember, we got standalone and memento mori, so this is actually a little around like 7.75% increased critical strike chance, right? That's increased by 60%. This one as well. So this is more like 21 or 22.25% increased damage to vulnerable enemies. Probably a little bit more than that, I'm being generous. And then finally, our golem here, you deal 30% increased critical strike damage. So it's all working perfect with the build. These both help with critical strike. This one helps with vulnerability. So it all synergizes together. We have lots of crit chance. We have lots of vulnerability, and it really just perfect together. I put some stats you're going to want to go to as well over each item slot. It's a lot of crit, as you imagine, and vulnerable damage. I mean, it's all kind of straightforward. That's what I love about this build. It's kind of intuitive. It's kind of straightforward. Like you want max essence, right? Max essence. You want, damage reduction, max life, bone skill damage, critical strike chance, critical strike damage, vulnerable damage, core skill damage is on the weapon as well. I think it's all pretty straightforward, and that's why I really like this build a lot. I hope you do too. If you guys like this video, don't forget to click that like button and subscribe for more Diablo 4 content. And next up is the Chain Lightning Sorcerer. This Sorceress build is awesome. It's fun, easy to play, and it is fast. It excels at clearing groups of monsters and has some of the fastest clear speed I've seen at low levels. This build is known for being top tier, one of the best leveling builds in fact, so it's a great pick for starting season 1. This build is the Chain Lightning Sorcerer, but before we get into the build, don't forget to click that like button, subscribe, and check me out on Twitch to see live gameplay. Let's begin, starting with the skill tree. So the first thing you're going to want to get is Arc Lash, and then you're going to get 1 point into Enhanced Arc Lash, so that swipes an additional time when you get a critical strike. This is really strong, and it's going to help you basically clear faster with your basic skill. In the core skill tree, of course, we're going the namesake Chain Lightning. We're getting Chain Lightning because it does amazing damage, but also it bounces around. It actually just clears your entire screen very easily without you really having to focus very much on where the monsters are. It'll just, honestly, it'll even destroy destructibles. It'll just bounce around. And that can be a little bit unpredictable sometimes. You'd rather it hit a monster than a destructible, right? We're going to get Enhanced Chain Lightning and Greater Chain Lightning. So it's going to bounce off of you. It's going to deal increased damage. And here it's going to deal 3% increased critical strike chance per bounce. So that's really nice. We're also going to go over to the defensive part of the tree and pick up Teleport, Ice Armor, and Frost Nova. All 3 of these are perfect for this build, of course. Teleport makes us unstoppable. It's really important if you're playing a hardcore character because you don't want to die. This is going to help you not only get around, but get out of any type of crowd control. This is going to decrease your cooldown on Teleport. If you hit at least, more enemies, you're going to get more reduction on your Teleport. Here we have Shimmering Teleport. You get 30% damage reduction after teleporting, which is really nice. Over here with Ice Armor, we're just going to get Enhanced Ice Armor. While Ice Armor is active, your mana regeneration is increased by 25%. This basically incentivizes you to just use this as much as you possibly can. It's also a barrier, but really we're going to go for that mana regen because it's so important to try to keep your mana up. And then we're going to get Frost Nova here, of course. Enhanced Frost Nova. It's going to reduce your cooldown by 1 second whenever you kill enemies frozen by Frost Nova. And then Mystical Frost Nova. Frost Nova makes enemies vulnerable for 4 seconds, increased to 6 seconds against bosses, which is really great. Vulnerability ability is so good in Diablo 4, is crazy good, and this is where we're going to get our vulnerability from Frost Nova, which is really important. Now, I typically get these a little bit later. We're going to want to max out Chain Lightning if you haven't already, and then you're going to want to get Glass Cannon. So that's sort of the order in which you want to do things. Glass Cannon is so great. You deal 18% increased damage, but take 9% more damage. Now, don't worry. We are going to get some stuff that give us some DR to hopefully make our character a little bit more tanky. Then from there, we're actually going to get 1 point into Devastation, increase your maximum mana by 3, and then 3 points into Elemental Dominance. Your core skills deal 9% increased damage when cast above 50 mana. So what I find I like to do is just keep my mana always above 50% before I cast those Chain Lightnings. Now from there, we can actually start getting some of these other skills, Align the Elements. This is going to give you some of that DR we were just talking about. You gain 1% damage reduction against elites for each second you haven't taken damage from one, up to 40%. So you can go into a fight with 40% damage reduction against elites, which is really, really nice. And keep in mind, elites are not just champions in elites, it's also bosses, world bosses. Align the Elements is fantastic. We're also going to get Mana Shield every time you spend 100 mana. You get 15% DR for 5 seconds, really strong. And then Protection, using a cooldown, grants 30% of your maximum life as a barrier for 2 seconds. And we've got really, like, what does this say? A cooldown. So Frost Nova is a cooldown, Ice Armor is a cooldown, and also Teleport's a cooldown. So we're going to be getting lots of maximum life as a barrier every time we use these cooldowns. We're also going to get Icy Veil to make these barriers last 15% longer. So things like Ice Armor lasts longer. The barrier we get from Protection lasts longer. It's all going to be very, very helpful to make our barriers last longer. All right, so once we get Icy Veil, we're going to have unlocked our ultimate skill tree. We're going to get Unstable Currents. And actually also at this time, you're probably wondering what your enchantment slot is. And the one that we're going to get right here is Firebolt. And the reason we're getting Firebolt is because check out this enchantment. Direct damage from skills applies additional burning damage over 8 seconds. So just having this burning on enemies is going to unlock a lot of really awesome things actually. And we're going to start getting those skills. Right here we have Inner Flames. So this is really a prereq for Devouring Blaze. You deal 30% increased critical strike damage against burning enemies. If they're also immobilized, this bonus is increased to 75%. So we're getting 30% increased critical strike damage now because enemies are going to be burning thanks to our enchantment, but also Fiery Surge. Killing a burning enemy increases your mana regeneration by 30%. This is huge. And then we're going to get Endless Pyre. You know, it increases your burning, makes them burn longer, but more importantly, we've got Warmth. Every 1 second you heal for basically 1% of your max life. For each nearby burning enemy, healing increased to 1.8% from bosses. So we've got more survivability here with Warmth and this awesome mana regeneration from Fiery Surge. Absolutely love it. We are going to upgrade Unstable Currents to Prime Unstable Currents and Supreme Unstable Currents. Check this out though. Lightning surges within you for 10 seconds. Whenever you cast a shock skill, a random core, conjuration, or mastery shock skill is also cast. So you're going to start seeing things like Lightning Spear go all over the place. You're going to see things like charged bolts. I saw what's this guy right here, Ball Lightning. I see these fly all over the place whenever you use your shock skills. So that's really cool. Also in the ultimate tree, we want to get Coursing Currents. Hitting enemies with shock skills increases your critical strike chance by 1%. Resets upon getting a critical strike. So every time you hit an enemy with your shock skills, crit chance is going to go up by 1%. And here, enemies deal 10% less damage for 5 seconds after being critically struck by your shock skills. So we're basically going to be getting a lot of crit because of Coursing Currents. And then check this out. Devouring Blaze gives you 30% increased critical strike damage. So great synergy between those two skills. Then finally over here, we're getting Veer's Mastery. I love this. It says close enemies take 10% increased damage from your shock skills and deal 20% less damage to you. Critical strikes increase these bonuses by 25% for 3 seconds. Now the reason I love this ability because it now encourages us to be in melee range. If you remember, we have Arc Lash as our basic skill, which is melee. This is actually a melee ability basically. And so we're going to be in melee range using all of our shock skills, getting all those bonuses, which is really, really nice. And so this is the skill tree. It's really awesome. I think it's fantastic. I've been having a lot of fun with this. This is probably one of my favorite builds actually. Let's go talk about the legendary aspects, the gems, the skills, enchantments. We talked a little bit about some of them, but we're going to go a little more in depth. So aspect of Disobedience, the best aspect in the game, defensive, I should say. You gain 0.5% increased armor every time you deal any form of damage, stacking up to 50%. So 50% more armor. Armor is such a great stat. Not only does it make your physical damage reduction go up, it also increases your resistances to all elements. So good. Try to get this as soon as you can. You can unlock this by completing Halls of the Damned in Kyrgyzstan. Snowveiled aspect says casting ice armor makes you unstoppable for 2 to 3 seconds, unlocked by completing Surat's Lair in Skazglen. This is great because it's another source of unstoppable, which is so important to keep control of your character, get out of crowd control especially. especially if you're playing hardcore. Aspect of the Expectant in your gloves, unlocked by completing Underroot in Skazglen. Attacking enemies with a basic skill increases the damage of your next core skill cast by 5 to 10%, up to 30%. This is great because we actually don't want to attack with our core skill unless we have 50% or more mana, thanks to our skill here, which is called Elemental Dominance, right? And so we want that 9% increased damage. So use your core skill, which is going to give you increased damage on your next core skill anyways, get above 50% mana, and then cast your core skill. So a little bit of nuance to play this correctly, but very, very synergistic with the way we're going to be playing anyways. Aspect of Might, basic skills grant 20% DR for 2 seconds, up to 6 seconds, unlocked by completing Dark Ravine and Dry Steps. Perfect, because we're going to be using our basic skill to generate mana as well. Aspect of Control in the Amulet, you deal 25% more damage to immobilize, stunned, or frozen enemies. We're going to be stunning enemies with Arc Lash. We're going to be freezing enemies with Frost Nova. So it's absolutely going to be beneficial for us to have that bonus damage unlocked by completing Sunken Library in Kyrgyzstan. Recharging aspect, each time Chain Lightning bounces off of you, gain 4 to 6 mana. Awesome. It bounces a lot more than you'd think, so your mana is really going to thank you for this ability. And you can unlock this by completing Zenith in Fractured Peaks. Then Prodigy's aspect, using a cooldown, restores 25 mana. We have 4 different spells with cooldowns. Now that we have our ultimate, we have Unstable Currents, Frost Nova, Ice Armor, and Teleport, all with cooldowns. And each time you use them, we're going to get 15 mana back. Very, very strong one. Unlocked by completing Witchwater in Hawazar. Awesome. So the gems. Emerald here, increase critical strike damage to vulnerable enemies. This is amazing. We have high crit. We're going to be generating vulnerability through our Frost Nova, and then basically we're going to increase our crit strike damage. And this is a great multiplier to increase your damage. Increase our maximum life with rubies, which is really nice. Always want to increase that max life. By the way, there's synergy there. We get a percentage of our max life back from Warmth. You can see here, heal for 1% of your max life. So the more max life we have, the more life we're going to be getting back from Warmth. So this is a great synergy there. And then this jewelry here, no brainer, just put skulls in your jewelry because armor is just so overpowered. And then the enchantment. So the first one you're going to want to get is Chain Lightning, automatically forms after spending 100 mana. And then as you start to have those extra skill points ready to get those fire skill passives, get Firebolt so that now your abilities are applying burning damage over 8 seconds, and you can get Warmth, you can get all of those different mana regeneration, all those awesome bonuses, increased critical strike chance from attacking burning enemies. So this is the build. It's so much fun. Honestly, out of all the builds I've been playing, this is probably one of my favorites. I love how Chain Lightning just bounces to all the enemies on your screen. It's kind of a lazy way to play because you can just click once and I didn't even know a guy was behind me, and the Chain Lightning went and hit him. So it's a lot of fun and really strong, honestly. And again, it's really one of the fastest leveling builds I've experienced. My character is just plowing through the levels. I can't even believe I'm almost like level 30 or something. So really great build. Highly recommend. Link to this in the description below. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to click that like button, subscribe for more. And next up is the Firewall Sorceress. And this sorcerer build is awesome. It's very different, fun to play, and kind of feels like you're playing a summoner sorceress. It excels at clearing both groups of monsters, but also it has really strong single target and really captures the class fantasy of a fiery mage. This build is known for being a top tier leveling build for sorcerers, so it is a great pick for starting season 1. This build is the Firewall Sorceress. Let's begin, starting with the skills. So first up, for our basic skill, we're going to get Firebolt, hurl a flaming bolt, dealing 10% damage and burning over 44% damage over 8 seconds. This is awesome. And we're going to get Enhanced Firebolt, which makes it so that it pierces through burning enemies. So once enemies are on fire, this is going to pierce going through them, hitting everyone else. And then Glinting Firebolt, critical strikes with Firebolt increase the burning damage you deal to the enemy by 20% for 4 seconds. So you kind of want to throw a Firebolt at an enemy just to make sure that they're getting that increased burning damage on them. Very nice. We're going to put 2 points into Fireball, hurl an exploding ball of fire, dealing 66% damage to surrounding enemies. Enhanced Fireball, and then Greater Fireball. So Enhanced Fireball says Fireball's radius is increased based on distance traveled up to 50%, and then Fireball deals 10% of the burning damage you've applied to enemies as additional direct damage. Moving over to the defensive skill tree, just like many other sorcerer builds, we are going to get Teleport. Very, very strong, pretty much includes in every single sorceress build. It's going to transform you into lightning, making you unstoppable and surge to the target location, dealing damage when you arrive. And then Enhanced Teleport, cooldown is decreased by 0.5 seconds per enemy hit up to 3 seconds, allowing you to use Teleport over and over again when you teleport into enemies. Shimmering Teleport gives you 30% DR for 3 seconds after you teleport, which is really nice if you're going to be teleporting into enemies, of course. We're going to get 3 points into Glass Cannon. This is a must for Sorceress. It says here you deal 18% increased damage, but take 9% more damage. So it's a trade-off that's absolutely worth it because you deal so much more damage. And then we're gonna get Ice Armor. A barrier forms around you, giving you 30% of your base life in damage absorption. While Ice Armor is active, 5% of your damage dealt is added to its barrier, which is really nice. And then Enhanced Ice Armor, while it's active, your mana regeneration is increased by 25%. Absolutely love this skill. It's a must. It really gives you the mana regen you need. But this fire build actually does really great with keeping its mana up, I have to say, when we get to those fire passives later on. Now we're gonna get 5 out of 5 with Hydra. This is a great skill. It was absolutely completely broken back, a few betas ago. They nerfed it, but it's still quite good. Summon a 3-headed Hydra for 10 seconds. Each head spits fire at enemies, dealing 17% damage, maximum 1 active Hydra at a time. And it says right here, while healthy, your casts of Hydra gain 1 additional head. Now this is great because this is basically increasing your damage by 25%. You're going from 3 heads to 4 heads, which is awesome. And then right here, summoned Hydra. Hydra also burns enemies for an additional 12% of its base damage dealt over 6 seconds. This is great because burning is sort of the condition we want to put on enemies for all sorts of different synergies that we're going to get to, but already Firebolt Piercing is one that we've seen already. 3 points into Precision Magic. Your lucky hit chance is increased by 15%. Over here we have Align the Elements. This is really just a prereq, but also it is kind of a 1-point wonder. Check this out. You gain 1% damage reduction against elites for each second you haven't taken damage from one, up to 40%. This is awesome. This basically just gives you like the first hit an elite's going to hit you, which by the way is like an elite, a champion, a boss, a world boss, or a blood marked player. This is going to give you 40% DR on that first hit, and then it's just going to keep regenerating for each second you haven't taken damage. This is actually a very nice skill. I like it a lot. 3 points into Mana Shield. Every time you spend 100 mana, you gain 15% DR. Very nice. And then right here, using a cooldown grants 30% of your maximum life as a barrier for 2 seconds. We've got lots of cooldowns here. Already just looking right here, we have 3. We've got Hydra, we've got Ice Armor, we've got Teleport, and of course we're going to get even more things with cooldowns down here with Inferno. And so each one of those is going to give us a barrier for 30% of our life, which is really, really nice. Love that talent right there. Over here we have some fire passives. This is where things get exciting. We've got Inner Flames. Your pyromancy skills deal 9% increased damage while you are healthy. Very nice. And then here we have Crippling Flames. Lucky hit. Your pyromancy skills have up to a 15% chance to immobilize enemies for 2 seconds. This chance is doubled while you are healthy. This is actually a must for this build, Crippling Flames, because you're going to be using firewalls and enemies are going to rush through your firewalls and go towards you. Now you could just put a firewall where you're standing. You're not going to take damage from it or anything, but it's really nice to be able to immobilize them, keep them at range while you create your firewalls. And so this is actually a very awesome talent so that you can immobilize them. Yeah, very good one. Then here we go, 5 out of 5 Firewall. This is such a great skill. It says here, create a wall of flames that burns enemies for 224% damage over 8 seconds. Huge damage. And it says each time an enemy takes burning damage, there's a 5% chance to spawn 2 firewalls underneath them for 3 seconds. That's the enchantment effect, which is really, really strong. And it says right here, Enhanced Firewall. Enemies take 25% increased burning damage from you while standing in Firewall. Very nice. And then Mage's Firewall. Enemies continue burning for 3 seconds after leaving Firewall. That is awesome. So all those really great enhancements. And then our ultimate here is Inferno. Summon a fiery serpent that continually constricts the target area, burning enemies for 300% damage over 8 seconds. Upgrade that to Prime Inferno to repeatedly pull enemies to its center. And then finally, while Inferno is active, your pyromancy skills cost no mana. So that is awesome. You can just go crazy during the 8 seconds here that the Inferno is going on, which is really awesome. We're gonna get Fiery Surge, which is probably one of my favorite sorcerer skills out of everything, which says killing a burning enemy increases your mana regeneration by 30% for 3 seconds. Awesome. This is why this build basically never runs out of mana. I absolutely love it. Endless Pyre says you deal increased burning damage to enemies for each second they remain burning, up to 15% for 5 seconds. So keeping them burning makes you do even more damage, which is awesome. Then Warmth, which is really nice. Every 1 second you heal for 1% of your max life for each nearby burning enemy. So if everyone's on fire, you're getting a lot of health back. Healing increased to 1.8% from bosses. This is so good. Love Warmth. And then finally, we're going to get the Combustion Key passive, which says your burning effects deal 2% increased damage per unique source of burning you have applied to the enemy. If the enemy is burning from 3 or more sources, this bonus is doubled. And you can make enemies burn from different spells, whether that's Inferno, Hydra, Firewall, Fireball, Firebolt, anything with fire in the name, right? And so you can deal a lot of increased damage there with combustion, which is awesome. So switching gears to skier and skills, I should say. Legendary aspects, there's not too many actually for this, but we are going to get my favorite defensive here aspect of Disobedience. You gain increased armor when you deal damage up to 50%, which is amazing. Unlocked by completing Halls of the Damned in Kyrgyzstan, which is great. And then Edge Masters right here. Skills deal 10% increased damage based on your available primary resource when cast, receiving the maximum benefit when you have full primary resource. You're going to basically almost always have full primary resource. I mean, this build really has great mana regeneration. Unlock this from completing Old Stones in Skazglen. Here we have a nice resource aspect called Incendiary Aspect. Lucky hit, burning damage has up to a 12% chance to restore 10 mana. Crazy good. Unlocked by completing Tomb of the Saints in Kyrgyzstan. Love this aspect. And then finally Prodigy's aspect. Using a cooldown restores 15 to 25 mana. This is so good. We have so many cooldowns. Hydra, Inferno, Frost Armor, Teleport. All of those have cooldowns, and so this is just fantastic. You can get mana every time you use that. Unlocked by completing Witch Water in Hawazar. When it comes to your gems, it's a no-brainer. We're going with the Amethyst for increased percent damage over time. We're burning damage all throughout, so Amethyst is perfect. The increased maximum life helps with the amount of health we're getting back from Warmth, right? It's 1% health back per burning enemy, and so if we have more max life, we get more health back. And then the Skull is just so good. Increased armor, it helps with physical damage reduction, elemental damage reduction. It's truly just the best for the amulet slots, for the jewelry slot. Always go with the skulls. And for our enchantments, we're going to get Firewall. We actually talked about this during the skill tree. This was actually buffed sometime between beta and live, so you can just have a chance to spawn firewalls whenever an enemy is burning, which is everyone's burning, so it can really just go crazy and kind of combust and kind of go nuts with all the different firewalls spawning everywhere. And we're also going to get the Fireball enchantment, which is why we got Fireball in the skill tree. You might have been wondering. It says here when you kill an enemy, they explode in a fireball for 50% of its damage, which gives you really crazy AoE even further. And this build, really honestly, like the reason I like this build sometimes more than other Sorceress builds is because the single target damage actually is surprising. Thanks to Hydra, the firewalls, and then pumping the firebolts into that single target, you actually have really good single target. And then this Fireball enchantment kind of is just the sugar on top here, making it really good at, AoE clearing as well. This build honestly surprised me how fun it was. I recommend you guys check it out. It is very, very good, especially once you get all of your skills unlocked. And next up is the Whirlwind Barbarian. And this Barbarian build is awesome. It's fun, it's fast, and it excels at clearing groups of monsters and has surprisingly really good mobility thanks to Lunging Strike and Leap. This build is known for being top tier, one of the best Barbarian builds in the game, in fact, and it's also great for leveling. So it's a fantastic pick for starting season 1, and this build is the Whirlwind Barbarian. Let's begin. And starting with the skills first this time. So of course we're going to be going with Lunging Strike as our basic ability. This is going to cause us to lunge forward and strike the enemy for 33% damage. I love this ability, and the reason I love it so much is because it gets your character right into melee range with your target. Like any monster that is like sidestepping, strafing, dodging backwards, you're going to be able to stick on them like no other, basically keeping you in melee range. So I really love this ability in order to keep you right in melee range with your target. We're going to upgrade that to Enhanced Lunging Strike so that it deals 30% increased damage, and it will heal you for 2% of your maximum life when it damages a healthy enemy. And remember, healthy is above 85% health, and that is what we're going to get. And then we're going to be able to unlock our core skill tree. Of course, the namesake of the build is Whirlwind Barbarian, so we are going to get Whirlwind, which does really great AoE damage. We're going to put 5 points into that. We're going to get Enhanced Whirlwind that says gain 1 fury each time Whirlwind deals direct damage to an enemy, or 4 fury against elite enemies. This ability really makes it so that you just never run out of fury. You're just constantly whirlwinding. I was so surprised when I first played the Barbarian at how long I was able to whirlwind for. Like typically, from Diablo 2, Diablo 3, you had to build up a little bit in order to be able to finally do that. But I mean, this ability really enables it. Of course, the more enemies you have around you, the more your fury is just going to be rock solid. You're never going to see it go down. If it's just one enemy, of course, you will eventually run out of fury, but the more enemies there are, the less your fury is going to drain thanks to Enhanced Whirlwind. Now we're also going to get Furious Whirlwind. While using a slashing weapon, Whirlwind also inflicts 40% of its base damage as bleeding damage over 5 seconds. This is actually a key part of of the build because we're going to make bleed also slow enemies, and then it's going to allow synergies with Aspect of the Umbral, which gives you resource back whenever you crowd control an enemy, and a slow is a crowd control. So this is actually pivotal to keeping your fury up as high as you possibly can as you play this build. We're also going to pick up Pressure Point, which says Lucky Hit. Your core skills have up to a 30% chance to make enemies vulnerable for 2 seconds. Vulnerable is so powerful in Diablo 4. I just can't get over it. Vulnerability is like it's its own bucket, so it's multiplicative. It's just so powerful. I'm still looking for the affix Lucky Hit. You don't have to go vulnerability, but that hasn't happened yet, but I'll keep trying with that Lucky Hit chance. But this is so important to get vulnerability into the build, so you're going to put 3 points into Pressure Point. Now moving over here, we're going to get Rallying Cry. It's really just a must in many cases. Bellow a Rallying Cry, increasing your movement speed by plus 30% and resource generation by 40% for 6 seconds and nearby allies for 3 seconds. So this is resource generation and movement speed. Both of those are fantastic. We're going to get Enhanced Rallying Cry, which gives you Unstoppable while active. I believe that every single build in Diablo 4 should have Unstoppable in it, whether it's Blood Mist as a Necromancer, whether it's Earthen Bulwark as a Druid, whether it's Teleport as a Sorceress. You need something that can make you unstoppable. I don't think Teleport makes you unstoppable. It might be something else, but you got to be able to get out of crowd control, especially if you're playing a hardcore character. There's so much crowd control in Diablo 4, so Enhanced Rallying Cry is just so great, and that's going to be your way to get out of crowd control. Over here, we're going to get Tactical Rallying Cry. It's going to generate 20 fury and grants you an additional 20% resource generation. Fantastic. More resources. I love it. Then finally, we're going to move down here and get War Cry. This is where things start getting juicy. Bellow a Mighty War Cry, increasing your damage dealt by 15% for 6 seconds and nearby allies for 3 seconds. So 15% more damage. Heck yeah, I will take that. We're going to make it enhanced to give you Berserking, which is even more damage. And then we're going to get Mighty War Cry, giving you 15% of your base life as Fortify. This is great because we're actually going to start getting some Fortify passive skills a little bit later on in the skill tree. Now, because we have both of those two shouts, we are going to get Booming Voice. Your shout skill effects durations are increased by 24%, making them last longer. So that means we get longer resource generation, longer movement speed bonus, longer damage bonus. Fantastic talent right there. Lots of synergies. We're also going to get Raid Leader. Your shouts also heal allies for 3% of their maximum life per second. Nice 3% heal per second is amazing, especially since we're making it last longer. We're going to get Leap as well. Leap surprisingly is not just a mobility talent. This surprisingly does really good damage, actually. I leap into enemies and I'm like, whoa, I basically just killed everything I landed into. So Leap, get 5 out of 5. This actually does really good damage. We're going to get Enhanced Leap. So if it doesn't damage enemies, its cooldown is reduced by 4 seconds. So if you are just using it to get around, you can use it more quickly. You're like a frog just leaping around. Boom, boom, boom. See, it's only got a, what is this, a 13-second cooldown. You can get that down to like 9 seconds with Enhanced Leap. Then Power Leap. If leap damages at least one enemy, gain 40 fury. It's a great way to initiate combat, especially if you're not at full fury. Basically just jump in there. You're going to have enough fury to start spinning. You're going to start generating fury. So it's just perfect to leap and then spin and then win. So it's perfect. You're also going to get Aggressive Resistance, gain 9% damage reduction while berserking. You will get berserking from Warcry thanks to Enhanced Warcry. So it's going to give you 9% DR. Prolific Fury, while berserking, fury generation is increased by 18%. This is massive considering how many ways we're going to generate fury while we're spinning around. And then Battle Fervor, when a brawling skill damages at least one enemy, gain berserking for 3 seconds. This is great. And these are the brawling skills here. And so this is basically Leap. Leap is going to do that damage and it's going to give you berserking. So you have 2 sources of berserking now. So we're getting 3 out of 3 with all of those berserking passives. Moving over to this part of the skill tree, we're going to get Pit Fighter. You deal 9% increased damage to close enemies and gain 6% distant damage reduction. Fantastic. Love the more damage we get. And here we have No Mercy. 3 out of 3. You gain 9% increased critical strike chance against immobilized, stunned, or slowed enemies. And remember, we're going to have a slow in this build, right? And that's actually what we're going to talk about next right here. Hamstring. Your bleeding effects slow enemies by 10%. Only need 1 point in this. We don't need to slow them more than 10% because it's really just binary. Are they slowed or are they not? We just need them to be slowed. So we get the bonuses from No Mercy, but we're also going to get Aspect of the Umbral, and that's going to give us some great resource generation as well. We're going to put 1 point into Thick Skin. Each time you take direct damage, gain 0.4% base life as Fortify. So this is amazing. Now we have consistent Fortify generation, and Defensive Stance increases the DR gained while you are fortified by an additional 6%. Awesome. So now we have some defensive talents. Now when it comes to the ultimate part of the skill tree, we're going to get 3 points into Heavy-Handed, while using two-handed weapons deal 15% increased critical strike damage. We're going to be using two-handed weapons for Whirlwind, for lunging strike. Two-handed weapons are the way to go. So we're going to get 15% increased critical strike damage with that. And we're going to get Wrath of the Berserker. Explode into rage, knocking back surrounding enemies and gaining berserking and unstoppable for 5 seconds. For the next 10 seconds, dealing direct damage with basic skills grants berserking for 5 seconds. So this is fantastic. It just gives you so much more berserking. It's going to give you all those berserking bonuses, and you're also getting unstoppable for 5 seconds, which is awesome. Here it says Prime Wrath of the Berserker. While Wrath of the Berserker is active, gain 20% increased movement speed and increase fury regeneration by 30%, which is great. And then finally, Supreme Wrath of the Berserker. While Wrath of the Berserker is active, every 50 fury you spend increases Berserk's damage by bonus by 25%, so even more damage. And finally, for our key passive, Unconstrained, increase Berserk's maximum duration by 5 seconds and increase this damage bonus by 25%. So lots of berserking bonuses. That's going to make you do tons of damage while you are berserking. Now, this skill tree is fantastic, but now we're going to have to switch over and talk about the gear skills and legendary aspects. So one of my all-time favorites, Aspect of Disobedience. You can get this from the Halls of the Damned in Kyrgyzstan. By far the best defensive aspect in the game. You gain 0.5% increased armor for 4 seconds when you deal any form of damage, stacking up to 50%. So you can get up to 50% increased armor, and armor is easily the best defensive stat in Diablo 4 right now. It's going to change in the future. The developers have said it's too strong. They want resistances to be better. So go get it while the going's good. Get this Aspect of the Disobedience, max out that armor stat because it is so good right now. Aspect of the Disobedience. You can get this every time. We're also going to get in the boot slot a utility aspect called Relentless Berserker's Aspect. Lucky hit, damaging an enemy with a core skill, has up to a 22% chance to extend the duration of berserking by 1 second, double this duration if it was a critical strike. Because so much of our build is built into berserking, we absolutely want to extend the duration of berserking as much as we can. And you can get this from completing Hakan's Refuge in Kyrgyzstan. Very good one for this build. But one that is even more important is Aspect of the Dire Whirlwind, and we're putting this into our two-handed weapon so that it has the double effect. Whirlwind's critical strike chance is increased by 8% for each second it is channeled, up to 24%. Massive bonus to critical strike chance, and you can see here it perfectly synergizes here. It says double this duration if it was a critical strike, so we absolutely want as much critical strike as we can with this build, and you can unlock Aspect of the Dire Whirlwind by completing Garen Hold in Skazglen. Awesome one. I love how these are only Codex of Power aspects, of course. There's other ones that you can get to finish this build, but again, this is just a leveling build to get you started. In our amulet, we're going to put Edgemaster's Aspect. Skills deal up to 20% increased damage based on your available primary resource when cast, receiving the maximum benefit when you're at full primary resource. Now, this is great because you can use Whirlwind when you're at full fury, and then you never have to recast it. You're just going to do that full 20% increased damage because it says when cast, and you're casting it just once when you're at full resource. So Edgemaster's Aspect is so good on anything that is channeled, like Lightning Storm, or in our case, Whirlwind. You can unlock this by completing Old Stones in Skazglen. Let's move on to the ring slot here. I talked a little bit about this briefly in the skill tree. Aspect of the Umbral. Restore 1 to 4 of your primary resource when you crowd control an enemy. How are we crowd controlling enemies? Well, our Whirlwind causes bleed, and what we're going to do with that bleed effect is we have Hamstring, and it says our bleed, whenever an enemy is bleeding, they are slowed by 10%. When they are slowed, that is a crowd control, and so we are just constantly crowd controlling enemies as we Whirlwind and constantly getting our fury back. So this is very key for keeping our fury high. Aspect of Echoing Fury goes into our other ring slot. Oh, by the way, I should mention, you can unlock Aspect of the Umbral by completing Champion's Demise in Dry Steps. I'm sure you all know about Champion's Demise, the S tier dungeon for leveling. Okay, let's move on to Aspect of Echoing Fury. Your shout skills generate 2 to 4 fury per second while active. We have 2 different shout skills, so it's just perfect to keep that fury generation super high. Unlocked by completing Sirocco Caverns in Kyrgyzstan. Super. So those are the Codex of Power aspects you can get every single time, guaranteed. Let's talk about gems. In the weapon slot, we're going to put Emerald. Deal 12% critical strike damage increased to vulnerable enemies. We have vulnerability from Pressure Point. If you remember from our core skill tree, Lucky Hit, we can make them vulnerable, and so we're going to increase critical strike damage to vulnerable enemies. This is a great gem. Almost most builds I see socket with the Emerald really is best in slot. When it comes to your armor, we're going to put Sapphires for the DR well fortified. We have a good chunk of fortified generation, whether it's from going berserking, even getting hit, we generate fortify, so we've got some good fortify generation. And then finally in the jewelry, skull, skull, skull. We're always going to get that bonus armor because armor is OP. Well, it is still OP. Season 1 it will be. Don't know about season 2 onward, but for now, put skulls in the jewelry. When it comes to the skills, we kind of went through it with the skill tree, but I do want to mention the technique we're going to go with. We are going to go with the two-handed axe for 15% increased damage to vulnerable enemies. And that's going to be very, very helpful because we're going to make enemies vulnerable. And when they're vulnerable, it's like a new bucket. And so we typically want to just increase that vulnerability bucket. Vulnerability is just so good. In fact, it might be too good. And that is the Barbarian Whirlwind build for leveling. Next up is the Hammer of the Ancients Barbarian. This Barbarian build is awesome. It's got amazing single target damage. It's fun to play and kind of feels like you're just splattering your enemies into goop. It excels at both clearing groups of monsters, but it's even better at single target and really captures the class fantasy of me barbarian, me like smash. This build is known for being a top tier leveling build for Barbarian, and it's a great pick for starting season 1. This build is the Hammer of the Ancients Barbarian. Let's begin by starting with the skill tree. So first up as our basic skill, we're going to get Lunging Strike. This one is great because it gets you in melee range and keeps you there. We're going to upgrade this to Enhancing Lunging Strike, so it does increase damage and heals you for maximum life when it damages a healthy enemy. And then we're going to get Battle Lunging Strike. Lunging Strike also inflicts 20% bleeding damage over 5 seconds. Bleeding is an affliction that will also cause slows thanks to Hamstring later on. When we get to our core part of the tree, we're going to get Hammer of the Ancients. Slam your hammer down with the Fury of the Ancients, dealing 70% damage to a concentrated area. Enhanced Hammer of the Ancients, which will give you 3% more Fury for 5 seconds for each enemy damaged by Hammer of the Ancients, which is awesome because it's actually going to splash and give you some nice energy regen. Fury, I should say. Furious Hammer of the Ancients here says Hammer of the Ancients deals 1% additional damage for each point of fury you had when using it. So you want to use this with as much fury as you possibly can, full fury preferably. Over here in the defensive part of the tree, we want to get Rallying Cry, 5 ranks into this actually. Bellow a Rallying Cry, increasing your movement speed by 30% and resource generation by 56% for 6 seconds and nearby allies for 3. We're going to upgrade this to Enhanced Rallying Cry to give you Unstoppable, and then a Tactical Rallying Cry, generating 20 fury and grants you an additional 20% resource generation. So getting Unstoppable is really important, especially if you're a hardcore character, getting you out of any crowd control, making it so that crowd control can't go on you, things like slows, stuns, blinds, things like that. Tether. Rallying Cry is just fantastic to avoid all of those things once we upgrade it. Now in the next part of the tree, the brawling part of the tree, we're getting a ton of skill points as you can see here. Starting off with Rallying Cry, Bellow a Mighty War Cry, increasing your damage dealt by 15% for 6 seconds and nearby allies for 3. We're going to upgrade this to Enhanced War Cry to give you Berserking, which is really strong for Barbarian. And then we're going to get Mighty War Cry to give you 15% of your base life as Fortify. Increased damage is fantastic, and we're actually, notice that we're going to get Berserking. We're going to do some things down here to make Berserking even better. Right here, Aggressive Resistance, gain 3% damage reduction while Berserking. This is really just a prereq for what we're going for here, Prolific Fury. While Berserking, Fury generation is increased by 18%. That's huge. So we want to Berserk as much as we can to get that increased Fury generation, which will make us do more damage. Here we're going to get Leap forward, then Slam down. This is a great mobility ability. And then we're going to get Enhanced Leap. If it doesn't damage any enemies, its cooldown is reduced by 4 seconds, allowing us to leap even more frequently. But we do want it to hit enemies. You can see here, Power Leap. If Leap damages at least one enemy, gain 40 Fury. And this is huge. And so basically this gives it multiple uses. If you want to leap at nothing to get around, you can hopefully have it off cooldown sooner. If you want to use it as an attack, it'll help you generate Fury, getting you ready for combat as soon as possible. Over here we have Booming Voice. Your shout skills effect durations are increased by 24%. We have War Cry here. We also have Rallying Cry, and so we're going to increase the durations with Booming Voice. Raid Leader says your shouts also heal allies for 3% of their maximum life per second, which is nice. And then we've got Guttural Yell. Your shout skills cause enemies to deal 12% less damage for 5 seconds. So 12% DR, very nice there with your shouts. Over here we're going to get Pit Fighter. You deal 9% increased damage to close enemies and gain 6% distant damage reduction, which is nice. No Mercy. You have 9% increased critical strike chance against immobilized, stunned, or slowed enemies. This is fantastic. And we're basically going to be making everything slowed thanks to hamstring right here. Your bleeding affects slow enemies by 10%. And we're going to also get two-handed sword technique so that it will cause bleeds. And our basic skill lunging strike already causes bleeds. And so we're going to get 9% increased critical strike chance against those slowed enemies, because hamstring here says your bleeding affects slow enemies. So perfect. We're only going to put 1 point into it because it's kind of binary. Are they bleeding or not? We don't really care how slowed they are. They won't live long enough for it to matter. We're going to get 1 point in thick skin. Each time you take direct damage, gain 0.4% base life as fortify. It really is just a prereq right here for counter offensive. While you have fortify for over 50% of your max life, you deal 12% increased damage, which is really nice. And then finally, the ultimate tree, we're going to put 3 points into heavy handed. While using two-handed weapons, you deal 15% increased critical strike damage. This is huge because right here we have 9% increased critical strike chance and then 15% increased critical strike damage. Very strong synergy right there. Call of the Ancients is just so strong. This is truly what I believe to be one of the most powerful barbarian ultimates. Check this out. Call upon 3 ancients to aid you in battle for 6 seconds. Corlic leaps at enemies, dealing 104% damage, and swings his opponents in a frenzy, dealing 39% damage per hit. Talik spins in a whirlwind, rapidly attacking enemies for 65% damage, and Madoc upheaves the ground, dealing 195% damage. Tons of damage there. We can upgrade this with Prime Call of the Ancients. While Call of the Ancients is active, gain plus 20% bonus attack speed and 10% increased damage. And finally, Supreme Call of the Ancients. Each of the Ancients gain additional power. Corlic says you gain 10 Fury each time Corlic damages an enemy with his Frenzy. This is actually really strong. You get tons of energy back thanks to this, or Fury. Talik gives enemies are slowed by 50% for 1 second when damaged by his Whirlwind, and then Madoc 30% chance to stun enemies for 3 seconds when using his Upheaval. This is really the best upgrade for your ultimate. Really makes it really strong. We're going to put 1 point into Tempered Fury as a prereq, going to give you 3 additional max Fury, and then Invigorating Fury here. Heal for 9% of your maximum life for each 100 Fury spent. The more Fury you spend, the more of your max life you get back, which is really strong. And then finally, our key passive, Unbridled Rage. Core skills deal 135% increased damage, but cost 100% more Fury. That's a lot of bonus damage. Very nice. Basically cost twice as much Fury though. So those are the skills, and pretty straightforward. Lots of straightforward synergies there. Moving on to the legendary aspects, we have some pretty sweet stuff here. Check this out. Aspect of Numbing Wrath. Each point of Fury generated while at maximum Fury grants X Fortify. So that means that when you're already at full Fury and you generate more, you're going to get Fortify, which is really nice. There's some bonuses we have for when we're fortified. Unlocked by completing Heathen's Keep in Hauzar. For our chest armor, we have Aspect of Might. Basic skills grant 20% damage reduction for 2 seconds. Unlocked by completing the Dark Ravine in Dry Steppes. That is very nice. Probably one of my favorite defensive aspects. Just using your basic skill, Lunging Strike, will give you DR, which is really nice. And then Aspect of the Expectant. Attacking enemies with a basic skill increases the damage of your next core skill by up to 30%. Unlocked by completing the Underroot in Skazglen. This is really nice because you're going to be using Lunging Strike anyways, and so why not get some extra bonus damage when you're using that as well. Edgemaster's Aspect here in the Amulet. Skills deal up to 10% increased damage based on your available primary resource when cast, receiving the maximum benefit when you have full primary resource. We already have a lot of skills in our skill tree that actually make it beneficial to be high Fury when we use our skills, so Edgemasters just gives us more synergy, encouraging us to not use our core skill when we're low Fury. Unlocked by completing Old Stones in Skazglen, and then we have Aspect of Echoing Fury here. Your shout skills generate 2 Fury per second while active, and we have 2 shout skills that are going to be able to be giving us Fury back. Unlocked by completing Sirocco Caverns in Kyrgyzstan. And then finally, probably one of the most important aspects for this build, Aspect of Ancestral Force. Hammer of the Ancients quakes outwards, dealing 32 to 50% of its damage to enemies. Unlocked by completing Sunken Ruins in Skazglen. Very important to go out and try to get this one as soon as you possibly can in order to get that maximum amount of damage from your Hammer of the Ancients. And when it comes to your technique, two-handed sword, 20% of direct damage you deal is inflicted as bleeding damage over 5 seconds. This is very important because we have a lot of synergy with bleeds, giving us increased critical strike chance and from hamstring and dealing damage to enemies that are slow to mobilize, etc. Now these gems are missing, but I can tell you we want Sapphire here. Increase critical strike damage to crowd-controlled enemies because we're going to be making them bleed, and thanks to hamstring, they will be slowed from that bleed, which means that they're going to be crowd-controlled. When it comes to the gem, 100% the ruby. We have tons of skills in the skill tree, which are going to give us bonuses based off of our max life. We're getting max life back from so many different things, and so the more max life we have, the more that's going to be beneficial to us. And then finally, for the jewelry, we're going to get the armor from the skull. Pretty much the best defensive stat in the game is armor. It's going to be that way probably until season 2 or 3. So always put skulls in the jewelry. But during season the Malignant, I'm sure we're going to get some crazy hearts that you can switch that up with. But use skulls until you get those crazy Malignant hearts and replace them. So I hope that was helpful, guys. This is the Hammer of the Ancients Barbarian. I actually had a lot of fun with this. I ended up playing it longer than I thought I would because it's simply fun. It's fun to just smash stuff, which actually I didn't think it would be that fun, but it was kind of a blast. So hope you guys enjoy this build as much as I did. If you did like this video, don't forget to click that like button and subscribe for more Diablo 4 content. Next up is the Twisting Blades Rogue. This rogue build is on another level. It's got amazing single target and AoE damage. It's really fun to play, and honestly, it kind of just feels overpowered. It excels at getting around and is probably the fastest leveling build in the entire game. Not only that, but this build is known for being a top tier build for rogue in the end game too, so it's a great pick for starting season 1. This build is the Twisting Blades Rogue. Now let's start by talking about the skill tree. So for our basic skill, we're going to get Puncture. You actually throw blades a short distance, dealing damage, and every third cast slows enemies by 20%, and it says here critical strikes will always slow, which is awesome. This ability is actually a lot of fun. We're going to get Enhanced Puncture, which says gain 2 energy when puncture damages a crowd controlled enemy, right? And it already slows them, right? And then here it says Fundamental Puncture. Puncture now throws 3 blades in a spread, each dealing 35% of its base damage. Hitting an enemy with at least 2 blades at once makes them vulnerable for 2 seconds. This is really strong because if you're basically in melee range, then your blades are going to hit them, make them vulnerable, which is 20% increased damage, which is really strong. Over here in the core part of the tree, we're going to get the namesake Twisting Blades. Impale an enemy on your blades, dealing 63% damage and making them take 8% increased damage from you while impaled. After 1.5 seconds, the blades return to you, piercing enemies for over 100% damage. Very strong. And then here we have Enhanced Twisting Blades, saying Twisting Blades deals 30% increased damage when returning. And then Advanced Twisting Blades, when your Twisting Blades return, your active cooldowns are reduced by 0.1 second per enemy they pass through, up to 2 seconds. This part has been nerfed many times, and it's still very good, reducing your active cooldowns. Very, very strong indeed. We're going to put 3 points into Sturdy right here. You gain 12% close damage reduction, and then 3 points into Siphoning Strikes. Heal for 3% of your maximum life when you critically strike close enemies. This is really strong because you're going to be getting critical strikes all the time based off of your puncture and melee range, and then that's going to heal you for 3% of your max life, and also Twisting Blades as well. So this is a great way to get your health back. Over here we're going to get Stutter Step, which says critically striking an enemy grants 15% move speed for 4 seconds. This is incredibly strong because you're going to be critically striking all the time, so might as well get that increased movement speed, which is really strong. You're already super mobile because we have things like Shadow Step. Become unstoppable and quickly move through the shadows to stab your victim from behind for 72% damage. Gain 50% increased movement speed for 2 seconds afterwards. This is really great. It allows you to get around. Not only that, it also makes you unstoppable, which is so important to get away from crowd control effects like slow, stunned, whatever. So Shadow Step is really good, especially if you're playing on hardcore character. We're going to upgrade this to Enhanced Shadow Step. Damaging an enemy with Shadow Step increases your critical strike chance against them by 8% for 3 seconds. So you Shadow Step them and then basically have a very high chance of your next attack being a critical strike, or your next few attacks, right, for 3 seconds. And then Disciplined Shadow Step says Shadow Step's cooldown is reduced by 3 seconds when it damages an enemy you have not hit with Shadow Step in the last 4 seconds. Basically, this is saying don't use Shadow Step 2 times on the same target. That way you're able to use it again much sooner by having its cooldown reduced by 3 seconds. So this is very nice. Definitely make sure to be aware of this ability so you don't just spam Shadow Step on a single target. Here we're going to get 3 points into Weapon Mastery. I really like this skill. Gain a bonus when attacking based on weapon type. Daggers deal 15% increased damage to healthy enemies. Swords deal just a flat 9% increased damage. Bows deal 12% increased damage to vulnerable enemies, and crossbows deal 15% increased critical strike damage. So all your different weapons getting all these different bonuses. We're going to put 1 point into Dash. I really like this ability. Dash forward and slash enemies for 37% damage. This has 2 charges and a 12-second cooldown. This is awesome because you basically it really helps you get around, whether it's running away or towards an enemy. Really strong. We're going to get Concussive. After knocking back or knocking down an enemy, you gain 12% increased critical strike chance against them for 3 seconds. And then we can put 1 point into Trick Attacks. When you critically strike a dazed enemy, they are knocked down for 0.5 seconds. And so that's how we're going to get that knockdown there for concussive bonuses. Over here in the Subterfuge part of the tree, my absolute favorite, Dark Shroud. Surround yourself with up to 5 protective shadows. Gain 8% damage reduction per active shadow. Each time you take direct damage, that damage is reduced and a shadow is consumed. Upgrade this to Enhanced Dark Shroud. Shadows now have a 10% chance to not be consumed. That's awesome. It's going to really improve improve the longevity of Dark Shroud. And then Subverting Dark Shroud, which says each active shadow from Dark Shroud grants you 4% increased move speed. So 4 times 5 is 20%. If you keep all 5, of course, as you take damage, you'll lose them. But this is amazing. 20% increased move speed just by having Dark Shroud up is so strong. For our next active ability, we're going to have Poison Trap here. Place a trap that arms after 1.25 seconds. Activates when an enemy moves within range, dealing 344% poisoning damage over 9 seconds to enemies in the area. You can have 4 armed traps out at once. Upgrade this to Enhanced Poison Trap. It knocks down enemies for 1.5 seconds. And remember, thanks to Concussive, we get critical strike chance increased when they're knocked down. So there's great synergy there. And then Subverting Poison Trap, you deal 10% increased poison damage to enemies standing inside your poison trap. All very nice. We're also going to get Exploit. This is very good. Deal 18% increased damage to healthy and injured enemies. So anything above 85%, anything below 35% health, get that 18% increased damage, which is really strong. Then we're going to get Malice, which says you deal 9% increased damage to vulnerable enemies. So already when you make someone vulnerable right from your basic skill Puncture, they get that 20% increased damage taken. But this is going to be an additional 9% increased damage to vulnerable enemies. So really getting a ton of bonus damage. It's so strong. We're going to get some of these passives here. Deadly Venom, you deal 3% increased poisoning damage right there. Debilitating Toxins, poisoned enemies deal 15% less damage. So that's really great with your poison trap. Anyone in there is going to deal less damage. And then Alchemical Advantage, you gain 1% increased attack speed for each enemy you've poisoned up to 15%. So depending how many people you can get poisoned, you can get up to 15% increased attack speed, which is really nice. Here in the ultimate part of the tree, we're going to get Innervation. Lucky Hit up to a 30% chance to gain 8 energy. That's just on everything, so that's awesome. We're going to get Trap Mastery. When Poison Trap or Death Trap activates, you gain 12% increased critical strike chance against vulnerable and crowd-controlled enemies for 4 seconds. So this is really strong. You're going to be making enemies vulnerable. You're going to be making them crowd-controlled, and so you're going to actually have that 12% increased critical strike chance happening pretty much most times when that trap activates, which is really where you're going to be doing a ton of damage. So really nice talent there. And then we're going to get Adrenaline Rush. While moving, you gain 5% increased energy regeneration. So this is just perfect. Like between monsters, between fighting while you're traveling, you're going to get increased energy regeneration. So you're pretty much going to go into your next fight with full energy. And then we're going to put 3 points into Haste. While at or above 50% maximum energy, gain plus 15% increased move speed. While below 50% maximum energy, gain 15% increased attack speed. So this is perfect. It's like, are you fighting something? Here's some bonus damage. Are you basically traveling? Well, here's some bonus movement speed. So haste is just perfect depending on your scenario, basically, which is depending on your energy level. And then finally, for our key passive, we're going to get Momentum. Cutthroat skills grant a stack of momentum for 8 seconds if they either 1, hit a stunned, dazed, or frozen enemy, 2, hit an enemy from behind. Well, at 3 stacks of momentum, you gain 20% increased damage reduction, 30% increased energy regeneration, 15% increased movement speed. So this is awesome. Getting those stacks of momentum are really strong and really give you all these sorts of bonuses, whether that's energy regeneration, damage reduction, or movement speed. Really strong key passive there. Now, when it comes to your legendary skills, you're going to want to get Blast Trapper's Aspect. It says Lucky Hit, dealing direct damage to enemies affected by your trap skills, has up to a 30 to 50% chance to make them vulnerable for 3 seconds, unlocked by completing Core Valar Ramparts in Fractured Peaks. This is really strong because vulnerability is 20% increased damage. With Malice, it's like 30% increased damage. So this is super strong. Definitely go out of your way to get this. You can get in Fractured Peaks right away, which is really nice. Make sure to get Blade Dancer's Aspect as well. Check this out. Twisting Blades orbit for a short time after they return to you, dealing 10 to 15% of Twisting Blades return damage per hit. Based on the distance the blades returned, the orbit damage increases up to 20 to 30% of the return damage. So this is awesome. This really encourages you to use Twisting Blades, make some distance between you and that target so that the blades really slash through everything as they return to you, dealing increased damage by distance. Really strong. You can unlock this by completing Jalal's Vigil in Skazglen. Very nice. We're also going to get Edge Master's Aspect. Skills deal up to 10 to 20% increased damage based on your available primary resource. So the more resource you have, the more damage you deal. Unlocked by completing Old Stones in Skazglen. And then we're going to get Ravenous Aspect. Killing a vulnerable enemy grants you 50 to 70% increased energy regeneration for 4 seconds. Unlocked by completing Shifting City in Dry Steppes. This is really strong because you're making enemies vulnerable from puncture from your traps, and it's really just going to help you with your energy regeneration after you destroy those vulnerable enemies, which will be happening all the time, so this is really going to be happening quite frequently. When it comes to your gems, you're definitely going to want Emerald, increase critical strike damage to vulnerable enemies. This is super strong. Increase your maximum life with rubies, and then, of course, the no-brainer, we always want to put skulls into our jewelry for that armor, which is like the best defensive stat in the game right now. And then for our specialization, we're going to go Inner Sight, attacking marked enemies to fill up your Inner Sight gauge. When it's full, gain unlimited energy for 4 seconds. Inner Sight can be quite strong, especially getting that unlimited energy. You can use tons of Twisting Blades over and over for 4 seconds because you have that unlimited energy after filling up your Inner Sight gauge. So this is the Twisting Blades Rogue. It is so good for leveling. It's probably the fastest leveling build. It's also super strong in late game, so highly recommend this build. Check it out. And that is the Twisting Blades Rogue. And next up is the Earth Druid. Now I know I talk about the Earth Druid a lot on this channel, but that is the class that I'm maining right now, and that's the specialization I'm spending a lot of time on. In this video, I'm going to go super in depth into everything you need to know about the Earth Druid, whether that's the skills you get while you're leveling, what do you change your skills to, what does that Paragon board look like, what gear do we want to go to, what stats, everything you need to know, all updated for you today. And let's just get right into it with the skill tree. So the best basic skill, in my opinion, is Storm Strike. It offers so much to you. You get 25% damage reduction for 3 seconds after dealing damage with Storm Strike. It chains to 3 surrounding enemies, and it also has a chance to immobilize and give vulnerability, which makes them take 20% increased damage. Storm Strike is by far, in my opinion, the strongest basic skill you can go with. Enhanced Storm Strike is where you get that immobilization, and then we go Storm Strike, Enhanced Storm Strike, and then Landslide. I like to make sure that I am level 4 before I even fight the first boss so that I have Landslide. Otherwise, you're just whacking away with a basic skill that doesn't do that much damage, so keep that in mind. Once you get Landslide, you're going to go back up and get Fierce Storm Strike, so that has a 50% chance to make enemies vulnerable for 20% more damage. It's a really big upgrade. From there, you want to get Enhanced Landslide and then Primal Landslide. Primal Landslide is key for this build. It says when you immobilize or stun an enemy, you gain a Terremote. Each enemy hit by Landslide consumes a Terremote, causing a guaranteed critical strike with 40% critical strike damage. Bosses always have up to a 10% chance to grant a Terremote when hit. This is a huge part of the build, and basically you can already see the synergies. Storm Strike has a chance to cause immobilization, and then Landslide will then consume those Terremotes generated by Storm Strike, giving you 40% increased critical strike damage on your next Landslide. So great synergies already. These two abilities work together great. And what's awesome is that you just unlocked the next part of the skill tree, and you can get Earthen Bulwark, and then from there, Enhanced Earthen Bulwark, so that it makes you unstoppable while it's active. Unstoppable is very, very good in Diablo 4. There's so many things that can snare, slow, stun, knock down, daze, blind, and so on. Your character in Unstoppable will free your character from those things, and there are many things that make it so you can't even use a healing potion. And so getting Unstoppable, being able to remove those effects from your character and then use your healing potion or run away or attack back is all granted through Unstoppable. And Earthen Bulwark is going to be our way to get Unstoppable. Now from there, we just want to put lots of points into Landslide to increase our damage. So we're going to put 3 more points into Landslide, so it's 4 out of 5. And this unlocks the companion part of the Druid skill tree. Now, if you saw my previous video, I ended up getting Poison Creeper. I still recommend that, but I also started getting Nature's Reach. Now at this point, you only have 3 abilities on your skill bar, and now 4 with Poison Creeper. You've got Storm Strike, Landslide, Earthen Bulwark, and now Poison Creeper. Now, is it better to get 3% increased damage? Would you like a whole nother skill that you can activate for 110% damage? So this is where I deviate and I say get Wolves, because a lot of the time early on, players are going to struggle to kill bosses with this build, and Wolves is really great single target damage. And you have to play intelligently. You only want to activate your Wolves on a boss once the boss is made vulnerable by Storm Strike, so that you get that 20% increased damage when you do activate those Wolves. Because it has a 14-second cooldown, you need to make sure you time it correctly. And you can see we're around level 14. This is when you're going to start fighting the end of Act 1 boss. So you definitely want to have both Poison Creeper and Wolves on your bars so that you have a full bar and you can do as much damage as you possibly can to bosses, which are going to take a little bit more time than other monsters. Now from there, I recommend you get another point into Landslide to 5 out of 5 it. It's a killer ability. It's going to be doing such great damage. You just want to continue to make it stronger and stronger. And along with Poison Creeper, by the way, I didn't even mention, but it immobilizes all enemies, right? That's going to generate a ton of Terra motes. Poison Creeper and Landslide are just made for each other. Getting all those Terra motes from Poison Creeper is going to make it so much stronger. So many more Terra motes, so many more critical strikes. It's just absolutely incredible synergy. Now, from this point, I do recommend you get Enhanced Poison Creeper and Ferocious Poison Creeper. And Enhanced Poison Creeper really doesn't do much for us because we just want the immobilization. It doesn't matter how long it lasts. Brutal Poison Creeper, we don't care about critical strike chance. We already get guaranteed critical strike chance with Terra motes, right? And so Ferocious Poison Creeper increases the active poisoning duration by 3 seconds. Now look here, it does 90% damage over 2 seconds. Making that poison damage last 3 seconds longer is giving it basically an extra 45 times 3, like 75% additional damage. It's actually insane. You can use Poison Creeper and then just walk away. Monsters will just melt, although it will take, up to 5 seconds. It's going to do a ton of poison damage, and so Ferocious Poison Creeper is actually very good and very much worth it. Now from there, you finally unlocked the Wrath part of the tree, and here we want to get Trample immediately. Trample is so strong. I know I said we're going an Earth Druid, but Trample is simply too good, and we immediately need to get Enhanced Trample. Trample deals 150% bonus damage. This bonus is reduced by 50% for each enemy hit after the first. So just make sure if you're up against a boss, use Trample first, and that's going to increase your damage significantly. Now at this point, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 skills. So our bar is finally full. We finally did it. We got everything we're looking for in terms of skills until we get to our ultimate. We also want to get, after this, we're going to finally start getting points into Nature's Reach. This is going to give us 6% damage per point. Distant enemies take 3%. Double it if they are slowed, stunned, immobilized, or knocked back. They're immobilized from Poison Creeper. They're immobilized from Storm Strike. They can be stunned from Trample. They're going to get knocked back in terrain and then become stunned, and you're going to get bonuses here. So this is 6% damage, 3 points into Nature's Reach. And the alternative that I'm basically thinking in my head, what else could I get, would be Crushing Earth. Earth skills deal 5% increased damage to slowed, stunned, immobilized, or knocked back enemies. So it's very close. Are we getting Nature's Reach or are we getting Crushing Earth? But I think Nature's Reach, since it's 6%, is better versus 5%. But of course, that's what we're going to get next, since it's basically just as powerful. We want to get Crushing Earth. So we're going to put 1 point into Crushing Earth, and then I'm going to put a 2nd point into Crushing Earth to unlock Petrify. Once we get Petrify, we can put a 3rd point into Crushing Earth, and we also want to take out a point in Wolves so that we can actually use Petrify. Now, Petrify is actually a pretty good ability. It increases your critical strike damage by 25%, enemies affected by Petrify, and then against bosses, the critical strike damage bonus is increased to 50%, and its duration is increased to 7.5 seconds. Now, guys, in some of this gameplay clips, you're going to see I basically trample the boss, cast Petrify, and they're dead. It's basically that fast. They just die incredibly fast from Landslide's critical strike damage. With Petrify, it's amazing. It's extremely powerful. And then from there, we want to get Safeguard. We want to start building Fortify. We're going to get Natural Trample, so it gives 20% of our base life as Fortify. And we're going to get Preserving Earth and Bulwark. 18% of our base life is Fortify. And the reason we're doing this is because there is an aspect that's going to give us increased damage based on how much Fortify we have. And I'm going to do an entire section on the aspects in the next section. We're also going to want to get Stone Guard. When you have Fortify over 50% of your maximum life, your Earth skills deal 4% increased damage. So this is really good because we're going to be building Fortify, and we're definitely going to have Fortify over 50% of our max life, and we want 4% increased damage all the time. Now, another amazing bunch of skills is Defiance. Nature magic skills deal 4% increased damage to elites. We want to get this. But more importantly, we want to start getting Natural Disaster, which is going to give our Earth skills 4% increase to vulnerable enemies, which we will get through Storm Strike. And then finally, Resonance. Nature magic skills deal 2% increased damage. Triple this bonus if an Earth skill is the next skill cast after a Storm skill, or a Storm skill is the next skill cast after an Earth skill. So nature magic is going to do 2 times 3 is 6% more damage per point because we're weaving. That's why this build sort of takes some skill. You basically use Storm Strike and then you use Landslide and then you use Storm Strike and then you use Landslide. And so you're weaving your abilities in order to increase these percentages. So this is 6%, 12%, 18% increased damage. So Resonance is something we want to get as soon as possible. It's really one of the most powerful talents or passive skills you can get for this build. And finally, at level 34, we can get either Nature's Fury or Earth and Might. And I know some people even want to get Ursine Strength. Now, guys, I have tested all three of these, and I can tell you that in my opinion, you want Earth and Might. And the reason I say that is because it has a chance to restore all of your spirit. And this is a really big deal. And by the way, that the 5% chance is increased by critical strikes, 10%, and 10% if the target is stunned, immobilized, or knocked back. And so you're immobilizing targets, you're stunning targets, you're knocking them back with trample. Earth and Might actually procs a lot. It really does. And because of that, it's giving you so much more sustain. Everyone complains, the druid can't generate spirit. Well, this is how the druid can generate spirit. Earth and Might. It's an amazing feeling. Your character glows. You get all of your spirit back. It's incredible. Earth and Might is definitely the way to go. I think, as you continue to level your character, restoring all of your spirit, I think is more and more meaningful, especially because your spirit's going to increase over time, depending on your Paragon boards, your gear, all sorts of things like that. So Earth and Might, I think, is really the best. And then from there, we're really just going to be improving the current things we have. So Natural Disaster is going to give us 4% damage per point. This is going to give us 4% damage per point. So they're about equal, Natural Disaster and Stone Guard. We're also going to want to max out Safeguard so that really we're getting tons of Fortify from our Earth skills. And then from there, we also do want to get Prime Petrify and Supreme Petrify. This is going to help even more with generating spirit because killing an enemy affected by Petrify grants 25 spirit. So the way I look at it is, let's say you're kind of low on spirit. Well, you can absolutely just cast Petrify and then landslide down all those targets. And that's actually going to probably leave you with more spirit than you entered that with. So really, really great there. And then we're going to max out some of our abilities. So Landslide's already maxed out. You're definitely going to want to max out Trample next. Trample is extremely powerful. This is really another boss killing ability. Just make sure you hit the boss first. It does 150% bonus damage. This was buffed during the Server Slam weekend, and I still just can't believe how good it is. The ability to just slam into a boss and deal a ton of trample damage. And we can even make this an Earth skill, which makes it really, really crazy. We're also going to want to max out Poison Creeper. This is an extremely powerful ability. Again, the poison damage just really adds up. You're going to be surprised by how much damage it does. I think it's extremely powerful. And then we're also going to put more points into Defiance. And then we also want to put points into Heart of the Wild and Wild Impulses. This is going to make our core skills cost 9% more spirit, but deal 15% more damage, which is really, really nice. And then with 2 points left, Circle of Life is actually really, really good for sustain. Nature magic skills that consume spirit heal you for 1% of your life. I actually really like this. I've noticed as an Earth Druid that, you kind of don't have a lot of sustain. Obviously, you have a ton of Fortify. You're very tanky, but there's really nothing that self-heals. And so Circle of Life is actually really great in order to get, percentage of your max life back. I think it's very, very helpful. You can even put 2 points into that for 2% of your max life. And so this is what the build sort of looks like. And, this is way down the road because getting all of these skill points requires you to get Renown. Your build's probably going to change before you even fill this entire skill tree out because there's a lot of aspects that we're going to get into in this next section, which change the build entirely. And I'm going to show you how the skill tree will look once you change your build around because of these aspects. All right, let's talk about aspects. Now, I actually think it'll probably be more helpful if I show you exactly where these aspects are. So I'm going to open up an interactive map. So this is Fractured Peaks. Everything in Fractured Peaks basically is not for the Earth Druid, and I've got it filtered to just look at the Druid aspects. So all of these are basically for, I would say, Shapeshifter. We've got Unsatiated, Stormclaw, Mangled, Night Howlers. Literally, Fractured Peaks is for the Shapeshifter Druid. If we go over to Skazglen, you can see it's actually mostly for the Earth Druid with a little bit of Storm. So right here is Crash Stone Aspect. And what I didn't know when I made the first deep dive is that in order to get Crash Stone Aspect, you actually have to complete Act 2, you actually have to beat the final boss. And no spoilers here, I won't say anything, but just know that you can't get this until you finish Skazglen, essentially. So this is not the aspect you'd get first. When I played the game, the first aspect I actually got was Ballistic Aspect. And Ballistic Aspect is very good, and I can add it right here. You're going to get plus ranks to your skills if you have Fortify. It says here, when you fortify, your earth skills gain +2 ranks, unlocked by completing Whispering Pines in Skazglen. So it's all the way over here. So if you're traveling north from Fractured Peaks, you can definitely go get this aspect on your way over to Tour Duldra, where you're going to go for your Druid quest and for continuing the campaign. And that's basically the only aspect you can get actually in Skazglen without sort of having to do a prerequisite. For example, Crashstone aspect, you do the campaign. And for Aspect of Quicksand from Farrell's Den, you have to actually clear Mordain Lodge, which is a stronghold. So it's kind of blocked. In order to get this aspect, you have to do a stronghold, and then you have to do the dungeon, right? Which, by the way, you can absolutely do. So after you're done with Ballistic Aspect, you could absolutely go and get Aspect of Quicksand. And Aspect of Quicksand is very, very important for this build. Damage from Earth skills slow enemies hit by 25 to 50% for 5 seconds. And the reason this is so important is because we have a lot of stuff that gets bonus if they are slowed. For example, we have Crushing Earth. Earth skills deal 15% increased damage to slowed enemies. So that's a really big bonus right there. And I believe here you go. Storm skills deal increased damage to stunned, immobilized, and knocked back enemies. So your Storm Strike gets stronger if an enemy is stunned, immobilized, or knocked back as well. And so this is Crushing Earth is just one example. There is another one. Here it is. Nature's Reach. This is 9 times 2, 18% bonus damage if they are slowed. And so Aspect of Quicksand is very, very good for increasing our damage. We want enemies to be slowed. So we got Ballistic Aspect, we got Aspect of Quicksand, and then let's, from there, honestly, just complete the campaign and then finally do Crashstone. So in my opinion, the order of aspects would be Ballistic, Quicksand, and then Crashstone. And Crashstone is really, really strong. You can put this wherever you want. Probably not the weapon, because you're going to be replacing your weapon, upgrading it, etc. Earth skills deal 30 to 40% more critical strike damage to crowd-controlled enemies. Crowd-controlled includes slowed, so it's perfect synergy with Aspect of Quicksand. And it says here, progress campaign in Skazglen to unlock. So you'll get this after you complete Act 2. Now from there, we're going to head to Dry Steppes. We've got a few options here. We've got Aspect of Retaliation. This one's very good. It's very close kind of as you head south here, so I do recommend you get this one. Aspect of Retaliation is fantastic. What it does is it makes it so that your core skills deal up to 20% increased damage based on your amount of Fortify. And remember that you're always going to get the lowest roll when you get these dungeon aspects added to your Codex of Power and then imprint them onto a weapon. So up to 20% additional damage based on your amount of Fortify. Very, very good. Unlocked by completing Seaside Descent and Dry Steppes. Now from there you can head east, southeast actually, and get Aspect of Mending Stone. Now Aspect of Mending Stone is one of my absolute favorites. You can put this in your helm. What it does is it increases the duration of Earthen Bulwark by 6 seconds. Now by default, Earthen Bulwark only lasts for 3 seconds. Okay, so this is literally like doubling, tripling the duration, right? It goes from 3 seconds to 9 seconds. This aspect triples the duration, and it says in addition, killing an enemy with Earth skills replenishes X of your active Earthen Bulwark's barrier. So it's going to make it last longer, stronger, and by the way, you're unstoppable while you have this aspect on. So you're basically becoming unstoppable for 3 times longer. This is great for survivability in multiple ways. So this is one of my absolute favorite aspects. You should totally pick it up. Aspect of Mending Stone. It says here, unlocked by completing Sealed, Archives, and Dry Steppes. Highly recommend that one. And from there, that's actually all the ones you can get from Dry Steppes. We got Retaliation and Mending Stone. The campaign will eventually lead you down to Kehjistan, and Kehjistan has one aspect, I believe, that we could get, which could be Aspect of the Changeling's Debt. The reason I like this one is it makes it so that you can deal damage with a Werebear skill to a poisoned enemy, and that poison damage is done instantly. I personally did not pick it up, but if you are interested in that, you can absolutely get that one. For some reason, it's not showing up here, but Aspect of Might is absolutely, oh, you know what? It's because it's a generic. Here, let me change the filter here. Aspect. I was like, where's Aspect of Might? It's absolutely needed. I guess it's in Dry Steppes. Aspect of the Umbral is actually one you definitely want to get as well. Aspect of the Umbral is very key to this build. You have to put it into your ring though, because it's a resource. Restore one of your primary resource when you crowd control an enemy. This is another way that we keep our resource up, because our earth skills are going to slow enemies hit, and then we're going to immediately get that resource back. And then Aspect of Might should be here. Here it is. It's actually right next to Aspect of Retaliation. We have Aspect of Might. This one's really strong. I'm going to put Might right here. Might. Basic skills grant 20% damage reduction for 2 seconds, unlocked by completing Dark Ravine and Dry Steps. So this is super helpful. 20% damage reduction is a ton. And so basically every time you cast Storm Strike, you get 25 plus 20, 45% damage reduction. Absolutely amazing damage reduction. Highly recommended. It's just so powerful. So Aspect of Might with Storm Strike is absolutely amazing. So we almost have most of our aspects now. We're going to continue on. If we go over east, the next one we get is actually super far away. It's all the way on the east coast, which is called Aspect of the Ursine Horror. Now we're going to have to put this into an offensive slot, so weapon it is. What it says is that Pulverize is now also an earth skill. After casting Pulverize, Tectonic Spikes continue to deal X damage over 2 seconds, unlocked by completing Belfry, Zakara, and Hauzar. This is where Pulverize becomes a key part of the build. It's where you start using it as your AoE skill. Now previously, when we look at the skill tree, whenever we ran into big groups of monsters, you probably, like me, would use Poison Creeper for big AoE damage, maybe follow up with a Trample to hit as many of them as you can, right? For big AoE, because Landslide doesn't have the best AoE. It's got a little bit of an AoE, but it's not amazing, right? But Poison Creeper in conjunction with Trample could really clean things up. However, once you get Aspect of the Ursine Horror, Pulverize is now an earth skill, and it's actually really good AoE, and you're not actually losing anything, right? This generates Terramotes, right? Well, if we take a look at Pulverize, it says right here, Raging Pulverize, enemies overpowered by Pulverize are stunned for 2 seconds. And if we look at Primal Landslide, it says when you immobilize or stun. And so it says here, you overpower with Pulverize every 12 seconds. So every 12 seconds, your Pulverize is going to overpower and generate Terramotes on everyone you hit. Every 20 seconds is when you'd use Poison Creeper and immobilize everyone. So you almost get twice as many Terramotes by using Pulverize than as you get from Poison Creeper. Now I will admit that Pulverize does less damage than Poison Creeper, but it's instantaneous. It also overpowers, which then will do more damage, and it also generates almost twice as many Terramotes. And so this is where I replace Poison Creeper with Pulverize, and you still keep Landslide, because Landslide does really, really good single target damage. And so you'd still do something like Storm Strike, and then Pulverize, Storm Strike, and then Landslide, depending on your situation, because of resonance. So you still want to weave, and it's really great that Pulverize is now an earth skill as well as a nature magic skill, which doesn't actually tell you that in the aspect, but resonance does apply to Pulverize, which is really, really awesome. Now, we've gone through a lot of these. I believe there's one more aspect that I may be forgetting. Aspect of Retribution, but I think it is, yeah, Retribution. So Retribution would be another one. We don't really have space for it, but it says here, you deal increased damage to stunned enemies. Petrified enemies are stunned enemies. Staggered bosses are stunned enemies. It's not the best in the world, but if you want to go grab it, you can get it. It's helpful. You know, you don't have to. I didn't use it, but you could. You could absolutely use it. I think there are better options though, for sure. Okay, so those are the aspects. Pretty much all the ones you can get from the Codex of Power. Now I want to shift this aspect session to talk about what is your best in slot aspect. Now, one thing that I found to be absolutely crazy was, I think it was called Natural Balance. Yeah, aspect of Natural Balance. This is pretty crazy. Casting a Storm skill grants your Earth skills critical strike damage for 4 seconds, 30%, or if it's on a weapon, it's 60%. I found a weapon where it was 90%, which is a perfect roll. So you cast a Storm skill and you gain 90% critical strike damage. And Landslide is a guaranteed critical strike with Terramotes. Kind of crazy. I want to show some footage here where Landslide is literally just one-shotting bosses, right? It's absolutely nutty, as people like to say. It's nutty. And then casting an Earth skill increases the critical strike chance of Storm skills by 8 to 12%. So that's your Storm Strike. And it's just perfect for the build where you weave. You can't get this from a Codex of Power, but you can absolutely find it and use it. And I was using it to great effect. It was very, very powerful with Landslide. Very, very powerful. Another thing you're going to want to get, you can actually replace Aspect of Retaliation with Aspect of Trampled Earth. This is absolutely insane. Trample now summons 6 landslide pillars of earth during its duration that deals 70 to 80% normal damage. Trample is now also a nature magic and earth skill. So this is huge. Trample is a key part of the build for single target damage, but now it can do massive AoE damage by trampling through enemies, and each single trample summons 6 landslides. It's absolutely insane. Now, another aspect we're going to want to put into our build is Aftershock. Aspect of the Aftershock. Landslide, Earth Pillars, each strike a second time and deal an additional 6 to 12% bonus damage per hit. Aspect of the Aftershock is amazing with Landslide because Landslide is basically going to get twice as much damage, and it's already doing an absolute insane amount. And there's great synergy with Aspect of the Trampled Earth. So you cast Trample, you get 6 landslides cast, and then they cast again, so you get 12 landslides. This just clears entire rooms. It doesn't matter if they're elites, it doesn't matter if they're bosses, it just clears everything you trample through. So Trampled Earth plus Aspect of the Aftershock, and don't forget, right before you use Trample, cast Storm Strike. It's going to get 90% increased critical strike damage along with all those landslide pillars. It's absolutely insane. Just make sure you're weaving every time you do something. So Storm Strike and then Trample, Storm Strike and then Landslide, Storm Strike and then Pulverize. Just make sure you keep doing those things. Now there's 2 uniques you're going to want to look for once you enter into World Tier 3. One of them is going to be Insatiable Fury. This is also going to change around your skill tree. Once you get it, you're going to be a werebear permanently, and then you're also going to want to look for Vasili's Prayer. What this does is it makes it so your earth skills are now also werebear skills and fortify you, and then here it says werebear form is now your true form, and you gain +2 ranks to all werebear skills. So this is huge. It basically gives you +2 ranks to all your earth skills, and your earth skills are now going to be like you're a bear and you're casting earth skills. It looks really, really cool. Now, once we go to the skill tree, because we're still using Storm Strike, and by the way, I figured out that Storm Strike reverts you back into a human. You can't be a bear casting Storm Strike. You actually turn it back into a human. And so as we're weaving our abilities, we're going to be turning into a human every single time we cast Storm Strike, and then we're going to go back into a bear when we cast an earth skill or a werebear skill. And so what I have found to be very effective is to take 2 points out of Circle of Life, 1 point out of Defiance, and put 3 points into Quick Shift. When a shape-shifting skill transforms you into a different form, it deals 15% increased damage. And so what happens here is that you have 18% damage increase from weaving, but now you have an additional 15%, which adds up to 28% increased damage by simply weaving your spells from Storm to Earth. So that is what I found to be extremely powerful once you have Insatiable Fury. And so this is looking pretty good. This is sort of very similar to what I'm running right now currently. Yeah, this pretty much covers it. We don't have Aspect of Retribution. We have a two-hander instead. This is very strong. You're going to do very, very well with this. Very, very well. You could even replace Aspect of the Umbral if you're doing fine on resource. Pick up what we were just using, which is called Aspect of Retaliation. Have your core skills deal increased damage based on your amount of Fortify. That's really strong. So absolutely keep that. Or even Crash Stone, which says Earth skills deal 30% more critical strike damage to crowd-controlled enemies. This is less effective towards bosses because they're never crowd-controlled. So depending on what you're good against, not good against, you can switch out what aspect you're using here. Now I want to talk a little bit about weapon, armor, and jewelry. What gems are you going to put in each? Definitely, if you are running this particular build, I would say Emerald. The reason for Emerald is because you deal increased critical strike damage to vulnerable enemies. They should be vulnerable if they, like you shouldn't even do anything until they're vulnerable. Just keep hitting them with Storm Strike until you make them vulnerable. It's 20% increased damage, and then you get increased critical strike damage to vulnerable enemies. And remember, with Terra Motes, Landslide will always critically strike. So it's basically guaranteed it's going to happen. So Emerald's very, very good here. I always do Ruby in the armor for increased maximum life. This is great for overpowers. It's great for survivability. I think maximum life is definitely the way to go because Pulverize is going to overpower. And once we get to the Spirit Boons, we're going to find ways to get even more overpowers. And then with jewelry, I actually like to go with the Skull for increased armor. Things like Insatiable Fury increase your total armor. I've seen a lot of items that are good for Earth Druid also have increasing your total armor. And so armor also gives you resistances as well. And so I think Skull is the way to go. Let's load up our skills here. I like to run Earth and Bulwark, Pulverize, Trample, Petrify, Storm Strike, and Landslide. This is very, very strong. Highly recommend this loadout. Again, like Trample is so good. You're just going to clear entire screens full of enemies. Petrify is going to help you get your spirit back, but also, if you're in a sticky situation, it's nice how it's basically like everyone freeze, like it's awesome. It's very, very good for staying alive. I mean, this build is just so tanky. Trample, by the way, gives you unstoppable. Earthen Bulwark gives you unstoppable. It's a very high survivability build. And when it comes to spirit boons, which you're going to unlock at level 15, you're going to want to get wariness. 10% reduced damage from elites. Elites are champions, bosses, world bosses, and elites. And so it's a lot of different monster types that you get 10% flat reduced damage from. It's really, really good. You're also going to want to get Avian Wrath. Gain 30% critical strike damage. This is really good because Terramotes give you guaranteed critical strikes. And so with guaranteed critical strikes, we get guaranteed increased damage with Avian Wrath. Now we're also going to want to get Pack Leader. Now you're going to want to get this before you replace Poison Creeper with Pulverize. So you're going to get these spirit boons sooner than you're going to get the aspect of the Ursine Horror. So you're going to start with Pack Leader, and the reason I highly recommend this is because it says lucky hit critical strikes have up to a 20% chance to reset the cooldowns of your companion skills. It's actually insane how often this procs, because you're constantly getting guaranteed critical strikes with Landslide, you're getting a ton of Pack Leader procs, and Poison Creeper is coming off cooldown all the time. So you're getting tons and tons of Poison Creepers. Now I know I was just saying how Pulverize is going to generate twice as many Terramotes. Well, honestly, I think it still will. And by the way, like the poison damage, what I found is that's weak with this is that, it's already going to die. Like you used Poison Creeper on the enemy, their whole health bar is poisoned, they're going to die. What benefit is there to use Poison Creeper again on that same monster that's about to die, right? Now, granted, you could save it for the next group of mobs, but I just found that it's good, but it's not optimal. And I still recommend you change over to Pulverize, even though this is a nice combo. So instead of getting Pack Leader, or I should say after you get Pack Leader, and once you get Aspect of Ursine Horror, you're going to want to move away from Pack Leader, and you're actually going to want to get Energize. Lucky hit dealing damage has up to a 15% chance to restore 10 spirit. Energize is fantastic. Another tool in our toolkit to ensure that we have spirit all the time, and we are generating enough to continue using our abilities. And then finally, we're going to specialize in the Snake Spirit Boon. We're going to get Obsidian Slam. Every 20th kill will cause your next Earth skill to overpower. This was recently nerfed. It used to be every 10th kill. It was amazing. Now it's literally takes twice as long to proc, but still overpowers amazing, and I think it's fantastic. Definitely go this one. And then you also want to get Masochistic. And you only can get Masochistic once you have Vasili's Prayer. And the reason for this is because not all of your skills are shape-shifting skills until you get Vasili's Prayer. So it says here, critical strikes with shape-shifting skills heal you for 3% maximum life. If you remember, we had Circle of Life to heal us for 1% of your max life, right? But we got rid of that and we got Masochistic. Now, the reason you only want to make this switch after you get Vasili's Prayer is because Vasili's Prayer makes your Earth skills now also Werebear skills. And by becoming Werebear skills, they also become shape-shifting skills. You'd never know this by looking at the item. I tested it, found that out, and it's amazing the synergy that can be found here. So Masochistic is going to benefit all of your Earth skills. That means that Landslide critical strikes, which are guaranteed, will heal you for 3% of your max life. Trample, Pulverize, of course, those are Werebear skills, so they will, of course, give you that heal. And actually, Landslide's the only Earth skill, actually. So Masochistic, really, really great. Going to actually give the Earth Druid a ton of sustain finally, which is really, really great to finally have some self-heals. So this is the Spirit Boon loadout I would go with. I think it's very, very solid. I think it's a great choice. Now, the final part of this is the Paragon board. Now, I've begun to work my way through the Paragon board, and I'm going to show you guys what I've discovered so far that's working for me very, very well. So we're going to work our way to the right with Willpower, 5% damage, and Prime, which gives 10% damage and 4% life. We're going to get 2% life, 5% damage, Willpower, Intelligence, Dexterity, Willpower, and this Glyph Socket. Now, I've unlocked a ton of glyphs by the time I got here, so I had a lot of different options, but I still think Outmatch is the absolute best starter glyph, and it's just perfect for the Earth Druid. You deal 16% increased physical damage to non-elites and bosses. It's perfect. I mean, once I got this glyph, things just died so fast. 16% increased physical damage. Pulverize does physical, Trample does physical, Landslide does physical damage. The only thing that doesn't do physical damage is Storm Strike, and that's really just there to apply vulnerability. So, and of course, get us out of bear form in order to get quick shift with our next attack and to get resonance with our next attack for that 28% increased damage. So that's why Storm Strike is part of the build. It's really 28 plus 20, which is 48% damage just by using Storm Strike. Now, in order to make this glyph work, we need to have 25 dexterity within the radius. And so what I like to do is get dexterity, 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 and then willpower, dexterity. You have to get every dexterity node in this starter area in order to activate Outmatch. And since you're pretty much, right here, I also like to get Resolve for resistance to elements, but also this grants 25% bonus to all rare nodes within range. So this 10 willpower becomes 12.5 willpower. This 4% resistance to all elements becomes 5% resistance to all elements. So it's kind of nice to just get all the rare nodes so that this glyph socket here, this Outmatch glyph, is really doing as much work as it possibly can. You're getting the most value out of it. And then you're going to get Strength, 5% damage, and Impel for another 10% damage. Then from there, you can just work your way up north or upwards, 5% damage, 5 strength, 5 intelligence. And then you're going to want to get the Survival Instincts Paragon board. Survival Instincts is perfect. I found it to give you the most damage out of any single glyph, any single Paragon board you could possibly go. It's incredible. You're going to want to work your way left after you rotate the board, and you want to make sure Spearhead is on the left-hand side. It's going to be really, really great for your build. So intelligence, willpower, intelligence, 12.5% increased damage to healthy enemies. Now, guys, at this point of the build, you're probably like, dude, I'm one-shotting everything. Exactly. And you want to continue to just one-shot everything. You hit them with Storm Strike, which does almost no damage, puts vulnerability, and then you hit them with a Landslide, and it literally just one-shots them from full health to dead. And so you want to ensure that you continue to one-shot everything. They go from healthy to dead, right? So this is 12.5% damage. This is now 25% increased damage. This is another 25, so this is 50% increased damage. We're going to pick up 50 armor, and then another 12.5% damage, which adds up to 62.5% increased damage to healthy enemies. Absolutely insane amount of bonus damage we just picked up so early on. Another 62.5% bonus damage to our abilities. It's insane. I had no problem at all taking enemies down with this. And then from here we go willpower, 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 dexterity. Now, of course, we go willpower because it's our primary stat. It increases the amount we heal. It increases the damage of our overpower, and it increases the damage of our abilities. So willpower is what we're focusing on as a druid. And then finally, we unlock Survival Instincts, which says, while in werebear form, you deal 1% increased damage up to 50% for every 1% difference in current life percent between you and the enemy. So once let's say you're at full health and they're at 80% health, you get 20% increased damage. Let's say you're at full health and they're at 70, you get 30% increased damage against them. So if for whatever reason you didn't one-shot them, which might be the case with certain bosses, you're just going to get more and more bonus damage as you lower their health, which is great because, it's just going to make the fight speed up. And once they're at 50% health, you have the max 50% increased damage, which is really, really nice because you're going to lose the 62.5% damage when they're no longer healthy. So Survival Instincts pairs really well with Spearhead and the surrounding nodes. So you get a lot of damage in the beginning, which will help you then secure that 50% damage as you get them to half health. I think they work together great. And then from there, I just worked my way up over to the right, 5% damage while in werebear form. That's perfect. We're always in werebear form with Insatiable Fury when we're not using Storm Strike. So basically when we use any other skill. And then we want to get Grizzly, another 10% damage while in bear form, another 5% damage while in bear form there, another 5% damage, and then you can absolutely pick up Dexterity and then your next glyph socket. Now guys, I want to be honest with you. This is as far as I've gotten with the build. Now, what I would get would be the one that gives vulnerability, which would be, I think it's called Exploit. Yeah, Exploit. This is what I would go for. When an enemy is damaged by you, they become vulnerable for 3 seconds. This cannot happen more than once every 20 seconds per enemy. This allows you to generate tons of guaranteed vulnerability, which is 20% increased damage. This is probably what I would go for. Now, this is Theorycraft. I haven't gotten this far. So I want to end here saying this is as far as I've got. I stream this every day, this build, if you want to learn more. But I would say this is an awesome build you could follow and do very, very well with it. I'm currently testing transitioning because, you know, the leveling and all that is solid. I think you can do that every single time. But the end game build, do we want to lean into Pulverize? Do we want to continue to use Landslide? I'm still testing out some different things, but I would say that right now, you know, up to here, it's solid. You can absolutely follow it. If you look at the gear and skills aspect of natural balance, you could replace this with shockwave aspect, which I'm currently in the process of testing. It says here, Pulverize creates a shockwave that travels forward, dealing 60% of its damage to targets in its path. I'm seeing a lot of people just use Pulverize with this aspect, and it's working pretty well. I would say during boss fights or monsters with a lot of health, it can be kind of lacking. Because Landslide is really the amazing single target damage, and Pulverize just doesn't really have that. But I'm testing that out. So guys, this is where I want to leave you. If you guys have any questions, leave it in the comments. Hop in my Twitch channel anytime when I'm streaming. Ask me questions about this build. I want to fully flush it out and just make it the best it can be. If you guys have any ideas for improvements, please let me know. Always open to make this build as good as it possibly can be. If you guys did enjoy this, if you could do me a huge favor, if you could just click that like button and click that subscribe button, that helps me out so much. So if you could do that, thank you so much. And next up is the Pulverize Werebear. I believe that this build is one of the strongest build for the Druid. This build uses Pulverize and Trample as earth skills to clear massive amounts of enemies and benefits from earth passive skills thanks to our legendary aspects. This build stays in Werebear form permanently thanks to Insatiable Fury. It is incredibly tanky and is perfect for a hardcore run, or if you just like to keep your character alive. It also has the most unstoppable mechanics out of any build in the entire game, so you are always in control of your character. Now I'm going to go through everything you need to know about this build, starting with the aspects and the equipment. So we have 2 uniques. You probably guessed it, Vasili's Prayer. Your earth skills are now also Werebear skills in Fortify you. There's a range between 5 and 10. This is great to just develop Fortify. There's a lot of skill synergies in the earth skill tree that help with making your skills more powerful when you have Fortify. But also we're going to be socketing with Sapphires, which is different than some of my previous builds. So Sapphires give you a flat damage reduction while fortified when you put it into armor. So 2.5% damage reduction while fortified per flawless Sapphire. And there's even a better gem after this. But this is what we're going to use Sapphires. We got Vasili's Prayer. We've got Insatiable Fury, which says Werebear form is now your true form, and you gain +2 ranks to all Werebear skills. We got 2 Sapphires in there. This is very good. It's got overpower damage, physical damage. Everything we use is physical damage, every single offensive ability. Total armor while in Werebear form. This is important because we're going to be using skulls in the jewelry, which give you extra armor. And so we're actually going to be looking for that affix, percent total armor. You can actually see this again on our necklace here. We got +3.2% total armor. And armor actually doesn't just help prevent physical damage, it also reduces elemental damage like poison, shadow, frost, lightning, etc. So we've got these 2 uniques, and then in our gloves we've got Gauntlets of the Ursine Horror. The Ursine Horror aspect makes Pulverize also an earth skill, very important to get all of those earth synergies. It says after using Pulverize, tectonic spikes continue to deal damage over 2 seconds. This is actually really good because it can actually get them in this little tectonic spike area, and that's going to deal damage to them and apply a slow. And thanks to our other aspect right here of the Umbral aspect, restore 1 to 4 of your primary resource as you crowd control. This is huge. If you can get a perfect roll of this, this is going to really help your damage and your sustainability, because every time you crowd control an enemy, you're going to be getting a resource back, which is really good. And it really just allows you to keep playing your build without stopping. Now, I kind of got a mid roll here with 2, but the reason this is really great is because of how it synergizes with aspect of the quicksand. Damage from earth skills slow enemies hit by 25% for 5 seconds. So every single earth skill that we have, which is every single skill we're using, actually is going to slow enemies, which is really, really awesome. And that's thanks to right here, Vasili's Prayer. Your earth skills are also werebear skills, and then you get +2 ranks to werebear skills. So that's a great synergy there. And then also we made Pulverize an earth skill, and we also here on our ring aspect of the Trampled Earth, Trample now summons 6 landslide pillars during its duration that deal damage, and Trample is now a nature magic and earth skill. So every single ability we have here is an earth skill, which is really, really great. And it's going to help out a lot with our synergies. The next aspect here, we have Runic Leggings of Mending Stone. I really like this defensive aspect because, well, this is a hardcore character, first of all, and any character, you know, obviously you want to survive. And it says here, the duration of Earthen Bulwark is increased by 6 seconds. In addition, killing an enemy with earth skills replenishes, is a perfect roll, 233 of your active Earthen Bulwark's barrier. So this is just very, very helpful for survivability. If you look at how long Earthen Bulwark lasts, it actually is 3 seconds by default. This literally triples the duration of your Earthen Bulwark. And don't forget, while you have an Earthen Bulwark on, you are unstoppable. That means you can't get CC'd, you can't get stunned, you can't get feared, you can't get tethered. You're basically able to keep control of your character. You can use your potions if you need to. You can use a Scroll of Escape if you need to, anything. So Earthen Bulwark, extending it literally by that amount of time, I think is incredibly powerful and is the best defensive aspect. If you're familiar with how aspects work, the legs can only have a defensive aspect, so this is the one I chose. We talked about the boots, very important to have aspect of Quicksand. And then on the weapon, we're having another key aspect. We have Shockwave aspect. Pulverize creates a shockwave that travels forward, dealing a percentage of its damage to targets in the path. This is really great to just, you know, really get the AoE you need for a Diablo game to just have an insane clear speed, hitting everything all at once. You're going to hit like 5 to 10 to 20, 50 enemies at a time. And thanks to aspect of the Umbral, you're going to get 2 resource back every time you hit those enemies. So it's going to really, really help keep your resource high and just continuously spam pulverizes as you go. Not to mention Trample. As you use Trample, that's going to hit an entire screen worth of enemies. It doesn't cost anything to use Trample, but it's also a great skill. It's also an earth skill that's going to allow you to generate resource as you hit enemies and slow them. And so thanks to that aspect of the Trampled Earth. So those are all the aspects. Oh, here's a really important one as well. Aspect of the Rampaging Werebeast. The duration of Grisly Rage is increased by 2 to 8 seconds. In addition, critical strikes while Grisly Rage is active increase your critical strike damage by 10%. So each critical strike will increase your damage by 10%. So, and also it gets longer. If you look at the skill, it says here damage bonus is increased by 3% each second while in this form. And it says here kills extend the duration by 1 second up to 5 additional seconds. And so this increasing it by 3 seconds is essentially another 9% extra damage as long as you can maximize that as much as you can. And so this is where, if you look at the thumbnail, we got that like 190,000 damage crit. It's because we had Grisly Rage on and we were up for a while. We get 20% bonus damage, and that goes up to even more. And then the critical strikes increase that damage even further. So it's really powerful, and it's really great to basically just make your Grisly Rage last a really long time, and so it can really maximize its damage and get really, really crazy. So those are the aspects. Let's look at Spirit Boons here. When it comes to the Deer Spirit Boon, I always choose Wariness. 10% damage reduction is amazing. You just flat out can survive against bosses, champions, elites. This is also the best PvP talent, Bloodmarked players. When it comes to the Eagle, I get the Avian Wrath, 30% increased critical strike damage. This is huge. Obviously, you want to do more critical strike damage, and your critical strike chance goes up once you get Earthen Devastation, which we'll talk about in the skill tree. And so you just want to increase that critical strike damage. Over here, we want to get Energized. Dealing damage has up to a 15% chance to restore 10 spirit. So Pulverize actually has a really good lucky hit chance, 28%. It used to be higher, they nerfed it, but you're hitting so many enemies. And honestly, with Energize, you just have such a good chance to actually get 10 energy back, 10 spirit every time you hit an enemy, and you're hitting so many of them, and it's a pretty decent lucky hit chance. I found this to be absolutely worth it. Then finally, we want to specialize here in this bottom one, Obsidian Slam. This is a must. They nerfed it literally by 50%. It says every 20th kill will cause your next earth skill to overpower. Overpowering is so powerful because it takes your max health plus your fortified health and adds that together to your overpower damage. You absolutely want this. Every 20th kill. It used to be every 10th kill, so that just shows how good it was, and I still think it's amazing. Then we're also going to get Masochistic. This is a key ability for this build. Critical strike strikes with shape-shifting skills heal you for 3% maximum life. Now, Pulverize is still a shape-shifting skill. And it's going to crit a lot, and you're gonna get 3% of your life back. All those different crits. Masochistic really allows your druid to have unlimited uptime, constantly gaining spirit or essence, whatever. You're constantly gaining health, and you're constantly fortified. It's very, very easy to just play endlessly without ever having to use a healing potion, without ever having to worry about your health. And honestly, you barely use your basic skill thanks to the interaction between your other abilities that can generate spirit, like Trample and even Debilitating Roar, which we're going to get to now in the abilities section. So let's talk about the build. We use just 1 point into Earth Spike, Enhanced Earth Spike, and then Wild Earth Spike. This is just going to help with spirit generation if you get in that desperate situation where you just need more spirit. We're going to put 1 point into Heart of the Wild and 3 into Wild Impulses, so your core skills deal more damage at the cost of more spirit. We're actually going to get full out Pulverize points. We're going to get full out Landslide points. And the reason we do points into Landslide is because Trample, thanks to Aspect of the Trampled Earth, is going to summon 6 landslides, which actually can deal quite good damage, because every time you immobilize or stun an enemy, you're going to get a Terramote, and these Terramotes give your landslides guaranteed crits. And so those landslide pillars that get summoned through your Trample are guaranteed critical strikes. It's just very, very effective area clear, but also spirit generation. It's also fantastic for potentially proccing Earth and Might, giving all of your resource back, which we're going to get to a little later. Very, very good to make landslide strong. Of course, you want Pulverize to be strong. This is the ability we're going to be spamming the most. And then we're going to get Enhanced Pulverize, so that every 12 seconds we'll get a guaranteed overpower, and it will stun the enemies thanks to Raging Pulverize. And those stuns are going to give us Terramotes for our landslides. All right, we're going to put 1 point into Earth and Bulwark. Just need 1. Just want that barrier. And we want to make sure it's unstoppable. It gives us unstoppable. And then also we want to get 18% of our base life as Fortify. The reason we want that is because we gain a lot of bonuses when we are fortified. So we want to make sure we are always fortified. And we do actually want to put points into Debilitating Roar, just 1. And the reason we do that is because, well, 70% damage reduction is really nice against, a threatening boss. Maybe it's powering up an ability right before they cast it off. Use Debilitating Roar to soften and mitigate that damage. But also, it's going to fortify you for your life, and that's good for this build. And then also, it's going to slow enemies by 65% for its duration. Now, if you remember, thanks to Ring of the Umbral, or Aspect of the Umbral, whenever you crowd control an enemy, you get instance back, spirit back. And so you can, when you're very low spirit, just run into a big group of enemies, use Debilitating Roar, and that's actually going to generate a bunch of spirit for you. And so Debilitating Roar, Trample, even turning into Grisly Rage is going to slow a bunch of enemies, and that's going to generate spirit for you. So really, this build has a ton of spirit generators, and this is actually just a really great contribution to the skill set here. We're going to get 3 points into Nature's Reach, one of my favorite skills for the Earth Druid. Deal 9% increased damage to distant enemies. Double this bonus, they are also slowed, stunned, immobilized, or knocked back. Since our Earth skills literally slow enemies that get hit, we're constantly going to have an 18% damage bonus thanks to this ability, as long as we're not in melee range. So stay distant. And then over here in the Wrath part of the tree, I like to get 1 point into Mending. Well, in Werebear form, you get 5% additional healing from all sources. That's from masochism or masochistic. 3% of our health is going to get increased by 5%. But I really like Provocation. When you remain in Werebear form for at least 20 seconds, your next skill will Overpower. Overpower is huge. We want as many as we can, and so Provocation is perfect. And again, this is only good if you have Insatiable Fury, which makes Werebear form your true form, and you're always in Werebear form. Trample, max this out. You can see this 11 out of 5. And remember, this is in fact a Earth skill thanks to Aspect of the Trampled Earth. So it's doing a ton of damage, and it does 150% bonus damage. It got buffed. Crazy. So definitely get Enhanced Trample and Natural Trample for 20% of your base life as Fortify. Again, you're going to want that Fortify because we're getting all of these Earth passives here. One of my favorites, Crushing Earth. Earth skills deal 15% increased damage to slowed, stunned, immobilized, or knocked back enemies. Again, we're slowing everything with our Earth skills. Then up here we have Safeguard. I like this to help generate Fortify. Critical strikes with Earth skills fortify you. So basically, when you use that Trample and you've got Terramotes, you're going to get a bunch of Fortify thanks to all of those landslides critically striking thanks to the Terramotes that you got. Stone Guard, when you Fortify over 50% of your max life, your Earth skills deal 12% increased damage. With this build, you will always abilities have fortify over 50% of your max life, except for like when you just start fighting stuff, but it builds up very, very fast. And finally, in the ultimate part of the tree, 1 point into Defiance. Nature magic skills deal 4% increased damage to elites. This is great because that's literally every offensive ability we have is a nature magic skill. And then I like to put 3 points into Natural Disaster. Earth skills deal 16, or sorry, if you put 3 out of 3, it would be 12% increased damage to vulnerable enemies. I have an item that gives this +1 up to 16%. And where do we get vulnerable from? We actually get that from our glyph in the Paragon board, which is really, really strong. And again, vulnerable is why I like to keep Stormstrike, but we got rid of it in this build because we can get vulnerable from that glyph and apply it much, much faster. And vulnerable is huge because it gives you 20% increased damage to that target. With Natural Disaster, that's an extra 12, or in my case, 16%. So that's like 36% increased damage. Very, very strong. Finally, let's look at this ultimate Grizzly Rage. Shapeshift into an unstoppable, see another unstoppable skill. So we've got literally 3 things to get us out of CC, which is why this build is so good for hardcore. For 13 seconds, gaining 20% bonus damage and 20% damage reduction. Amazing. Damage bonus is increased by 3% each second while in this form. Kills extend the duration by 1 second up to 5 additional seconds. So we can get this up to 18 seconds. With the glyph, we can add an additional 8 seconds to that. So what is that? We got 13 plus 5, 18 plus another 8, 26 seconds, which is up to 26 times 3. That's around 78 or so, 76% extra damage. Insane if you fully max out how long you can be in Grizzly Rage. Absolutely amazing. And a core part of this build. And you can see right here, it's because we got Prime Grizzly Rage, that Grizzly Rage gives you Unstoppable, and then Supreme Grizzly Rage, gain 8% base life as fortified per second while Grizzly Rage is active. Some nice passives there. Now, really one of the most important parts of this entire build right here, we have Earth and Might. Lucky hit damaging enemies with Earth skills has up to a 5% chance to restore all your spirit and cause your attacks to be guaranteed critical strikes for 5 seconds. Guaranteed critical strikes. That's a big reason why we chose Avian Wrath for 30% increased critical strike damage. We've got Terramotes, we've got Earth and Might, things that give us guaranteed crits, so we don't really need critical strike chance. We just want to make our crits stronger. And it says here this chance is increased by 10% for critical strikes, which we get a lot with Trample, and also 10% if the target is stunned, immobilized, or knocked back. They're going to be stunned, they're going to be immobilized, they're going to be knocked back. Trample does stun and knock back. Pulverize does stuns, and so you can absolutely increase the chances of making this happen. And it happens a lot. And so whenever you get this Earth and Might proc, it's really amazing. It's a great time to just start laying into enemies because first of all, you're getting all of your spirit back, so you can just spam Pulverize, and it's going to be guaranteed critical strikes. So it's really, really powerful. If you can also overpower during that, an overpowered critical strike is where you're going to get some pretty crazy damage. So this is the skill tree. I've got all of the renown skill points. So this is maxed out to the max. There's no other points you could possibly get. And I found this to be incredibly powerful, and I can probably take this all the way to level 100, level 69 right now. Let's take a look at the Paragon board. Now, what I've found is that when it comes to the Paragon board, it seems like you just really want to pick up almost everything on the way there. There's just so much good stuff in the Paragon board. But the way I started by going right and picking up Prime. This gives you 10% extra damage, an extra 10% if you meet the intelligence requirement. So this is 20% extra damage. It's kind of crazy. You also get some max life. These nodes here are also amazing. Like 2% max life is going to help your overpower damage, also your survivability. Then I moved up through here and I put this glyph in here called Exploit. This is really what gives us 20% additional damage. It says when an enemy is damaged by you, they become vulnerable for 3 seconds. This cannot happen more than once every 20 seconds. So you need to basically kill them within those 3 seconds. So I like to deal damage to healthy enemies, but 20% increased damage is crazy. And so this is, in my opinion, one of the best glyphs you can get. I mean, it's just absolutely amazing. It gives you all your abilities applying vulnerable, 20% extra damage. And you need to have at least 25 dexterity within this range. So I picked up every dexterity node, as you can see. When a glyph becomes level 15, the radius expands. So it becomes a little bit easier to get all of the requirements to make it activate. But in this case, it worked perfectly. And while I was picking up this dexterity, I thought, why not pick up 2% resistance to all elements and also resolve for an extra 4% resistance to all elements. And I'm literally 4 dexterity away. I'm going to try to get this soon. I'm going to pick a node. Actually, it literally takes 2 seconds. Just add like 1 dexterity node, right? In order to get an extra 4% resistance to all elements. So it'll be a total of 8. Over here, we have Impel, 20% extra damage. It's 10 plus another 10 if you meet the requirements. And by the way, some glyphs increase the effectiveness of rare nodes or, nodes in the radius. So this glyph does not do that, but some glyphs do, so pay attention to that as well. 5% damage. Also, this intellect is just, it's nice to get a lot of intellect in order to activate. So I got the requirement here for an extra 10% damage. So it's absolutely worth it sometimes to take these magic nodes that give you a bunch of stats in order to activate. So like it makes a lot of sense here to just get this magic node for 7 dexterity to activate resolve. As we move up, I chose the Survival Instincts Paragon board. I looked at every single Paragon board, and the highest spike in damage I could possibly find was Survival Instincts for this build. And so what you're gonna wanna do is rotate the board so it looks like this, kind of looks like a helmet, and then you're gonna go up the left side, and these magic nodes are insane. You got 12.5% damage to healthy enemies. So literally my goal with this build is let's just one-shot everything, right? And Pulverize can absolutely do that, and you can see that in the gameplay footage. So this is 12.5%, another 12.5, so that's 25, and then another 25 with Spearhead, so that's 50% increased damage. That's a huge, massive number, and you can get another 25% if you just get enough in intelligence, which I plan to get, and then you get actually another 12.5%. So that's a total of 62.5% increased damage, which is a huge number. And then from there, I just got all the willpower nodes, and we picked up Survival Instincts, which says, well, in Werebear form, you deal 1% increased damage up to 50% for every 1% difference in current life percent between you and the enemy. So basically, once the enemy gets to, well, basically like 99%, you've got 1% increased damage, right? Up to 50% when they're at half health. And so basically Spearhead is perfect because it really helps when they're healthy. And then once they're not healthy, you've got like 25% increased damage. So it does fall off pretty fast. You want to make that first initial hit very powerful to get them below healthy. And then, you lose this like 62% damage, but now you're gaining more and more damage as they get lower health, which is why these two interact very well together. I moved up here and I started picking up these bear passives. 5% damage while in Werebear form. Well, Werebear form is our permanent form, so this is perfect. Also Grizzly, another 10% damage while in Werebear form. More damage in Werebear. And then I got the glyph socket here, which is Undaunted. And the reason I chose this one is because this is actually the only glyph socket, the intelligence glyph socket, which actually you have enough nodes. There's not enough for willpower. There's not 40 willpower. There's not 25 dexterity. You actually have to upgrade your glyph to make it have a bigger range if you want to put it in this particular tree. It says here you got plus 10% damage while fortified. No problem. This is great because we're going to always be fortified. And you also gain up to 10% damage reduction the more fortify you have. So 10% more damage and 10% damage reduction. I think this is a great glyph socket. It's also an intelligence requirement, so it actually fits out of the options. There's another one called Outmatch, which I wanted to put here, which is something like 16% increased physical damage, but this is actually probably better because it's also got that 10% damage reduction. We're going to get more of these magic nodes, Armor Will and Werebear form. We've got 2% Armor Will and Werebear form, willpower. And then over here we have some more damage, Werebear skill damage, 3 of them right here. And then we've got Ursine for 30% overpower damage and 10% Werebear skill damage. And you got 15% overpower damage on either side. Currently I'm working over to this node as well. This is Zealous, 12.5% damage while healthy, very strong. You're always going to be healthy. Honestly, this build is so tanky. You've got a very long-lasting Earthen Bulwark, lasts for 9 seconds, and you're generating Fortify. Masochistic is making it so every crit you get heals you for 3%. You're literally always at full health, which is why this is such a great hardcore build. And then we're also going to get more damage while healthy. From this, I'm probably going to go over to the Earthen Devastation Paragon board after I get these nodes here. It's very easy to just kind of swing over here and get the next board. But this is how far I got so far with the character spirit boon, abilities, skill tree, and Paragon board. I don't think I'm missing anything. I think we got everything. If you guys have any questions, let me know in the comments below. Happy to help answer. I think this is probably the most meta or the strongest druid build. I know there are some other ones, but this one is probably the most popular. And so this is sort of how I would go about putting it together. I started with the Landslide leveling build. I think that is the perfect build to level. Once you hit around level, I don't know, I think around 60 or mid 60s, I think it's a great time to transition over to this build once you have access to all the aspects and you're ready to make that transition. One thing I did want to mention before we go though, this is really important. You do want to have a weapon with at least 701 item power. This is sort of the break point. It's an absolute minimum because 726 plus item power is just a break point and your weapon's going to do so much more damage. As you can see, 94.5% overpower damage is huge. And so that goes up once you reach that 726 126 item power plus breakpoint. And so, and all the other affixes on here, you can see this has a ton of really strong stats. So make sure if you're ever going to replace a weapon, look for that 701 item power and go for that. And next up is the Storm Werewolf Druid in Diablo 4. This build is by far one of the most fun builds I've played, but not only that, it is easily the best druid build I have ever tried. It's got incredible survivability, so much damage reduction. It has incredible clear speed, and it is just so much fun. I can't wait to show you guys this build. I truly think this is probably one of the strongest druid builds, truly, and I don't know if I can ever go back to any other build after trying it. If you guys like this video, don't forget to click that like button and subscribe for more. Let's get started. We're going to start with going through some of the different items, starting with the helm. So for the helm, you're going to need Tempest Roar. This is a unique helm. You can only get uniques from World Tier 3 onward. It's pretty rare, I would say, but after the bug fix so that druids no longer see other classes uniques, you should have a decently easier time than in the past in order to get this, but absolutely a must, because it's going to make it so that your storm skills have a chance to grant spirit. And this is huge because your storm skills hit so constantly. You know, tornado is just doing damage like every second, and you can throw multiple tornadoes out. It's going to give you absolutely incredible sustain. Your resources is just going to be coming back so fast with this. It's just an absolute must. On top of this, this also makes your storm skills also werewolf skills, which allows for huge synergies in the skill tree, which we're going to get to in just a little bit. For the chest piece, I like to put Vigorous Aspect. Now, Vigorous Aspect makes it so that you get damage reduction when you're shapeshifted into a werewolf. And when your storm skills are also werewolf skills, anytime you use a storm skill, you're going to turn into a werewolf. And so this is going to give you basically just a 15% damage reduction anytime you're using abilities. So this is really, really strong. And you can see here some of the stats I chose. I re-rolled for more total armor. Armor is great because it does both physical and elemental resistances. This is really great. Physical damage bonus. Tornado does physical. Hurricane does physical. Those are your main damage dealing abilities. So you want to actually get more physical damage and then also damage while shapeshifted. This is actually just a really nice chest piece, I would say. Not to mention also control impaired duration reduction, even though that's rolled as low as it possibly can be. This build only has one way to get out of CC, and that's through Grizzly Rage, which we'll get to. For the gloves, we put Mighty Storm. The Earth and Might key passive also applies to your storm skills. Earth and Might, in my opinion, is just the most powerful ultimate skill you could possibly go for the druid. It gives you a chance to get all of your resource back and get guaranteed critical hits. It's just so good. And because your storm skills are just hitting so consistently, Hurricane, Tornado, you're getting way more procs than any Earth build I've seen. And so you're getting your resource back all the time. It's extremely powerful, very good. You can see some of the stats I have on here. It's actually quite good. You know, get your resource back, storm skill cooldown reduction, and then look at that amazing critical strike damage with werewolf skills. It's really good because during Earth and Might, you get guaranteed critical strikes, so you want more critical strike damage, right? And also the the heal on the chance to heal is really nice too. When you're crowd controlled, your stuff is still flying around, your hurricane's still on. You can actually get healed quite a bit while you're crowd controlled, so I actually really like that lucky hit on the gloves there. When it comes to the pants, we're going to do Aspect of Disobedience. You can see here you get 0.5% increased armor for 4 seconds when you deal any form of damage stacking up to 50%. 50% increased armor. This is so huge. This is like probably one of the best defensive aspects in the entire game. Hurricane does a lot of damage. Tornado does a lot of damage. You're going to basically have a constant 50% armor increase, which is huge for staying alive. Once again, this is like one of the highest damage reduction builds I've ever seen, quite frankly. And you might be wondering, why didn't we get Mad Wolf's Glee in the chest? Well, these aspects are just better, you know, rather have the 15% flat damage reduction and the 50% increased armor. It's just so strong. And then what's actually really fun here is Wind Striker's aspect. This gives you 14 or up to 16% move speed after you get a critical strike, which we'll be getting critical strikes guaranteed when we get an Earth and Might proc. And so once you get Earth and Might, you're basically going to get a constant move speed increase, which is really nice. I mean, you kill stuff so fast, you actually do want to have that increased move speed. Moving on to the weapon, critical strikes with core skills increase your attack speed by 20% for 5 seconds. That's accelerating aspect. This is really awesome because you want to attack faster, cast more tornadoes as fast as you can. So you're moving faster, attacking faster. This is just a really awesome aspect. And again, it's proccing with critical strikes, and you're going to get guaranteed critical strikes with Earth and Might. So it all kind of fits together great. great. And then on your offhand, your totem, you're going to have right here the aspect of retaliation. Your core skills deal up to 40% increased damage based on your amount of fortify. When we get to the skill tree, we're going to show you exactly how we get some of those fortify skill points, right? Probably think fortify, that's like an earth thing. Well, it can actually also be a storm thing as well. And you can see on here, I've got plus 20% fortify generation on there and 13.5% damage reduction while fortified. So there's a lot of fortify synergy in this offhand I've got right here. All right, moving on to the neck piece, we've got Direwolf's Amulet. This is an absolute must for the build. It says Grizzly Rage now shapeshifts you into a dire werewolf. As a dire werewolf, you gain 35% move speed instead of damage reduction and a 69% spirit cost reduction bonus. This is huge. In addition, your kills heal you for 10% of your maximum life. So this is really what makes the build even more tanky, right? You might be CC'd, stuff's dying around you, you get healed for 10% of your maximum life. Not only that, but you're getting move speed and you're getting a spirit cost reduction. This is why right when you use your ultimate, you can just go to town just spamming tornadoes and you can probably cast them infinitely, which is so fun to finally just have a core skill you can spam endlessly. So really great right there. Storm Chasers aspect in the ring slot says tornado will seek up to 3 targets. Really nice to kind of mindlessly be able to just cast tornadoes and they'll go find something to hit, which is really nice. And then Circle of the Rampaging Werebeast. This is really important. It says here the duration of Grizzly Rage is increased by 4 seconds. In addition, critical strikes while Grizzly Rage is active increases your critical strike damage by 10% for the duration. This is why the combination with Earth and Might, the guaranteed critical strikes, is just absolute insanity, the synergy there, because every time you crit, it increases your critical strike damage and you're going to get guaranteed crits when you get Earth and Might. And so in Earth and Might, while you're in your Rampaging Werebeast form, Grizzly Rage, you're just going to do so much damage. It's going to get crazy. And so really great synergies all around. And so those are the aspects I would go after in the gear. Remember, Tempest Roar really is a must. The one thing I was waiting on to finally unlock this build. Now, when it comes to spirit boons, let's talk about deer. I love how there's 2 deers. They got to fix that. This is supposed to be a snake. We've got Wariness. It's just the best one. 10% damage reduction from elites. Elites are basically elites, champions, rares, but also it's bosses and world bosses. So 10% reduced damage. I will take that. Those are basically all of the deadliest things in the game. And so getting that 10% reduction from against them is great. And then when it comes to the Eagle, we want Avian Wrath, 30% increased critical strike damage. Because we get those guaranteed critical strikes from Earth and Might, we just want to make them stronger. And then we want Calamity. Extend the duration of ultimate skills by 25%. Because Grizzly Rage is just so good for this build, and by the way, it gets stronger the longer it lasts, Calamity has a lot of synergies, and that's what we want. And along that same line of logic, we actually also want to get Calm Before the Storm. Lucky Hit, nature magic skills have up to a 10% chance to reduce the cooldown of your ultimate skill by 2 seconds. This is going to help us maintain Grizzly Rage as much as we possibly can, because once again, it's our way to stay CC immune, and also, of course, all the synergies that make us so incredibly powerful while we're in Grizzly Rage. And then finally, we want Masochistic. Critical strikes with shape-shifting skills heal you for 3% maximum life. All of our storm skills are also going to be werewolf skills, and so tornado, hurricane, etc. Whenever we get those critical strikes, we're gonna get heals. And again, Earth and Might gives us guaranteed critical strikes, which means guaranteed heals. Awesome. Let's look at some of the skill tree. So we start out with Storm Strike, Enhanced Storm Strike, and I love Fierce Storm Strike to apply vulnerability. When it comes to the core skill, it's probably very predictable. We're gonna get 1 point in Heart of the Wild and 3 and 2 Wild Impulses. Core skills cost more, but deal more damage. Max out Tornado. We're gonna get Enhanced Tornado to have a chance to spawn an additional tornado, and then we're gonna have the Raging Tornado to give a chance to cause vulnerability, which is 20% increased damage to our target, which is so strong. Predatory Instinct, 6% chance to crit against close target, so you do want to run up to people. And then Digitigrade Gate, this one's always fun. You gain 9% movement speed while in werewolf form, giving you some extra mobility. Coming over to the defensive part of the tree, we want a 5 out of 5 Cyclone Armor. This is just so strong. 13.7% non-physical damage reduction is massive. And then we're going to also get Enhanced Cyclone Armor, which will slow targets when you push them away. And then Preserving Cyclone Armor, giving you 30% extra damage reduction for 2 seconds every 10 seconds, which is pretty nice. An extra 30% damage reduction. We're also going to get Blood Howl, and then we're going to get Enhanced Blood Howl and Preserving. This is going to increase your attack speed by 15%. Depending on your clear speed, which should be very high, you should be able to constantly have this 15% attack speed. It's absolutely amazing. And I mean, honestly, you don't need the heal. It's really all about getting that 15% attack speed, which is so strong. We're going to pick up some defensive stuff here. Ancestral Fortitude increases your non-physical resistances by 5%. That's really just a prereq to unlock Vigilance. You gain 15% damage reduction for 6 seconds after using a defensive skill. deal. This is really nice because we have 2 defensive skills here, and basically because Blood Howl is basically always coming off cooldown, you almost have an automatic, or I would say almost always on 15% damage reduction. I mean, it's absolutely crazy. Blood Howl comes off cooldown way before Vigilance comes off, and so you get really a permanent 15% DR, which is really strong. Nothing in the companion tree. In the Wrath tree, we're going to pick up some nature passives, or I should say storm passives. 3 out of 3 elemental exposure. Your storm skills have up to a 10% chance to make enemies vulnerable for 3 seconds. Very good. Endless Tempest. Increase the duration of Hurricane and Cataclysm by 15%. Very strong. Of course, we want Hurricane to last longer so that we can keep that uptime as much as possible, because this is going to be generating hits to increase our armor, right? Every time we deal damage, we get 0.5% increased armor. We want that lasting as long as possible. There is downtime where Hurricane is on cooldown and we don't have it, and this sort of shortens that gap between when we don't have it up. So it makes our Hurricane last longer. We're also going to get Enhanced Hurricane to make it so enemies who are damaged by Hurricane get slowed, but then this is really good. Check this out. Enemies affected by Hurricane deal 20% less damage. There's so much damage reduction in this build. It is wild. Just awesome. And then we're going to put 1 point into Neurotoxin. Poison enemies are slowed, but even more importantly, 3 points into Envenom. Poison enemies take 30% additional critical strike damage. And so, right here, Toxic Claws, critical strikes with werewolf skills deal 8% of their base damage as poisoning damage over 4 seconds. You get guaranteed critical strikes with Earth and Might. They're going to get poisoned. Once they're poisoned, they'll take even additional critical strike damage. So really fun synergy there between Toxic Claws and Envenom. So just 1 point in Toxic Claws just to get that poisoning going so that you can do 30% more critical strike damage to them. Moving over to the ultimate part of the tree, we got Defiance. Nature magic skills deal 12% increased damage to elites. This is really great just because, again, elites are going to be the monsters that you encounter that have the most HP. Then over here, we've got 3 out of 3 in defensive posture, increases the amount of fortify you gain from all sources by 15%. Very nice. And then 5% chance when struck to fortify you, 4% base life. So a little bit of survivability, getting that fortify when you get hit. We're also going to get Grisly Rage, of course. We were talking about this. You become unstoppable, a dire werebear, right? But we change it to make it a dire werewolf, right? And then right here it says you're unstoppable while Grisly Rage is active, and then gain 8% base life as fortify per second while Grisly Rage is active. So it helps you build up that fortify even further. Very, very awesome. It says here, damage bonus is increased by 3% each second while in this form. This is so strong. You want to make this form last as long as possible. Kills extend the duration by 1 second up to 5 additional seconds. So of course you want to use this when there's a lot of enemies around you, or an elite, a boss, etc. Then my favorite, Earth and Might. Damaging enemies with Earth skills has a 5% chance to restore all your spirit, cause your attacks to be guaranteed critical strikes for 5 seconds. Very, very strong. We talked about how we're making this also proc from storm skills, which is really, really great. Now when it comes to the Paragon board, very similar to what I was running with the Pulverize Werebear. I actually didn't change much, so we're still gonna go both ways here. We're gonna get Territorial instead of Exploit right away. I think they both have similar requirements here, but Territorial is the glyph we're going for here. This is going to give you 10% damage reduction against close enemies and increased damage to close enemies. So again, you do want to sort of run up to enemies and hit them, right? Throw tornadoes in their face. You're going to move up to the Lust for Carnage board, which says critical strikes with werewolf skills restore 2 spirit. Really strong to keep that sustain. Right here we get the werewolf glyph. You gain 10% damage reduction while in werewolf form. Very good. And then 25.3% increased damage while in werewolf form, which we're going to be in all the time. So this is really strong. And then we're going to branch off into 2 different directions. First one's going to go north, and then we're going to get this one right here, Earth and Sky. Increased storm skill damage. Nature skills deal 10% increased damage to crowd controlled or vulnerable enemies. We're going to be slowing stuff. We're going to be making enemies vulnerable. This will be happening all the time. So Earth and Sky is perfect. And we're going to also, that's from the Thunderstruck board. Storm skills deal 30% increased critical strike damage against vulnerable or immobilized enemies. Super strong. We're also going to get Tempest, which gives you 30% increased critical strike damage and 10% vulnerable damage. All of this is just so strong. As we move over to the left, we're going to get the Constricting Tendrils board, not for the actual legendary node, but because this glyph is just so close, we can throw Exploit into it. And so this is as far as I've gotten. We still have to get like these dexterity nodes to activate it, but I'm only level 82, so the build is not complete yet, but this is definitely an extremely powerful build so far. And over here in this board, we are going to probably go get Heightened Malice. They're definitely going to be enemies around that are going to be poisoned. We absolutely are going to want to get that 45% increase increased damage. There's still some things we have to unlock with this build. We're only level 82, but this is the build so far. Now guys, if you like this video, do me a favor, click that like button, helps me out a bunch, and subscribe if you want more Diablo 4 content. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.